Chapter 641. The devilish, purple-haired youth came back to his senses, his face as red as a pig's liver. As he looked at Suyu, he felt as if he was facing the fifth Saint Master. It was as if the latter could decide his life and death with just a thought. His heart was filled with despair, and he had no hope of escaping. Even the strongest tribulation lightning was suppressed by a single hand. What other methods did he have? The devilish purple-haired youth's heart turned cold as he glanced at the mangled corpses on the ground. If he waited for Suyu to attack, his end would not be any better than theirs. In fact, it might even be more miserable. He was the one who had destroyed the Heavenly Law Alliance's warship, so there was no reason for them to let him die so easily. The devilish purple-haired youth struggled in his heart as he thought of the possibility that he would be buried in the raging flames and burned to death. Rather than dying miserably, it was better to end it himself. For him, who had no hope of escaping, this was his only choice. I will remember all of you. The devilish, purple-haired youth's heart was filled with sorrow. Just a moment ago, he was still a commander-in-chief, but a moment later, he was forced to commit suicide. It was all thanks to Suyu that they were in such dire straits. With a vengeful look in his eyes, the demonic purple-haired young man bellowed furiously, and the jinshi in his body surged to the top of his head. Puff, like a fountain, fresh blood burst out of the top of his head and sprinkled into the air. His eyes quickly dimmed, and his corpse crumpled to the ground like soft mud, without any signs of life. Long Jueshin and Old Shun were both dumbfounded, and if they hadn't witnessed such a scene with their own eyes, they would have just treated it as a joke. The scene in front of them made them fall into deep shock. What kind of desperate situation had a fairy realm been forced into that he would choose to commit suicide? When they looked at Suyu again, both of them were anxious. Suyu, who was not emitting any sort of aura, gave them a sense of majesty. That kind of pressure made it difficult for them to get close to him. The eighth Saint Master looked at the corpse of the devilish purple-haired youth and silently sighed. A long while ago, the other party had angrily scolded him for surrendering without a fight, saying that it was a disgrace to the Saint Masters. As he thought of this, he sighed in his heart. It's not that I surrendered without a fight. It's just that I know that if I resist, your fate will be my future. Suyu calmly averted his gaze and looked at the eighth Saint Master coldly. Now, tell me, how do you know me? As for the origins of the Saint Master and the otherworldly experts, Suyu already had an answer in his heart. The eighth Saint Master hesitated as he looked at Long Jueshin and Old Shun. Both of them understood what he meant. Senior Su, I will go and gather the scattered sailors. Long Jueshin and Old Shun no longer dared to call him by his name. Suyu nodded. All right, let's appease them first. The warship was disintegrating, and everyone was panicking. They needed the Alliance Master to step in. After a short while, only the two of them and the bound First World Senior were left in the room. Tell me, how did you know about me? Suyu asked. The eighth Saint Master hesitated for a moment before he forced a smile and said, Forget it. It's not a secret anyway. I come from the world of Jiuzhou. I believe that when you came into contact with the geniuses of Jiuzhou in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, you should have already known of its existence. In this world, the Jinlong continent is not the only one. In comparison, the Jinlong continent is insignificant. In Jiuzhou, it is just a small human city. Hearing this, Suyu's heart contracted fiercely. The vast Jinlong continent was only equivalent to a city in Jiuzhou. How vast would such a city be? What kind of world was the Nine States? Since you know about the existence of Jiuzhou's geniuses, how could Jiuzhou overlook you? The eighth Saint Master said, Your name is quite famous among the Central Prefecture guards. You are an outstanding genius who came from a barren land, and you have fought against many famous top-notch geniuses in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. Heaven's Pride Lu Qi, the greatest genius of all time, Gu Taishu, as well as several famous Divine Master clones, were all defeated by you. You have such an illustrious battle record, so it would be difficult not to notice you. Suyu's gaze became ice-cold. How did you know? Were you also spying on me that day? Sensing Suyu's killing intent, The eighth Saint Master's heart shuddered. He hurriedly said, "Your Excellency, please calm down. We aren't from the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. So how could we have entered the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion under their strict surveillance? We just have another method to observe the general situation in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. As such, we can vaguely sense any intense fluctuations." He then added, "We detected that all of those people had appeared and fought against you. However, all of them were defeated." Suyu's expression became even colder. "Does this mean that all of you witnessed the entire battle?" He had used all of his treasures and cultivation techniques during the battle. Many of them were things that couldn't see the light of day, such as prototypes of fairy artifacts. The eighth Saint Master laughed bitterly. "Your Excellency, you don't need to worry. It is an extremely difficult task to avoid the 18 blessed and heavenly land's eyes and ears while observing the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. So, how can we possibly observe it so clearly? We could only vaguely sense who won and who lost, but we don't know anything about the process of your battle. Even your image was barely seen at the last moment, and we used all of our power to observe it. Is that so?" Suyu carefully observed the eighth Saint Master's gaze. After he ascertained that he wasn't lying, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was no wonder that the eighth Saint Master had surrendered without even fighting him. Any grade 2 fairy would probably be terrified of Suyu's power, which could kill even a divine master's clone. However, what they didn't know was that Suyu couldn't use his powerful Great Sun Punishment Fairy picture, 5 elemental strong thunder seal, and the evil ghost bloodline for the time being. Suyu could only rely on the fusion of the origins now. Moreover, he wouldn't easily use any techniques that could seriously injure him. With his current power, he could at most deal with a level 3 fairy. However, Suyu had a new question. The eighth Saint Master kept mentioning the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, and it seemed like he was their enemy. "Now, tell me your identity," Suyu said. The eighth Saint Master didn't dare to hide anything. "I am the 8th Commander of the Central Prefecture's Black Shadow Guards, Wuhan." Central Prefecture? This was the first time Suyu had heard such a title. The Jeju continent is divided into 9 prefectures, and the Central Prefecture is one of them. The Central Prefecture's guards are the guards of the Central Prefecture's king, and they're divided into the Bright Light Guards and the Black Shadow Guards. The Bright Light Guards are responsible for protecting the Central Prefecture's king, while the Black Shadow Guards work in the dark and deal with the Central Prefecture's king's shady affairs. Everyone had their own secrets, even kings. Since ancient times, which of the emperors of the mortal dynasties didn't have their own secret and mysterious forces to deal with matters that couldn't be dealt with openly? The Central Prefecture's king was an exception. What is the relationship between the Central Prefecture and the 18 blessed and heavenly lands? So you asked. The 18 blessed and heavenly lands are located at the border of the Central Prefecture, and they are a region that refuses to submit to us. They are guarded by 2 all-creation old monsters, and they refuse to merge with the Central Prefecture's king. They are a thorn in the Central Prefecture's king's side. He then added, "Due to some special reasons, it isn't convenient for the Central Prefecture's king to attack the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. Moreover, the 18 blessed and heavenly lands don't want to clash with the Central Prefecture's king. So, although they belong to the Central Prefecture in name, they are actually independent. Moreover, the Central Prefecture has also sent an all-creation old monster to guard the Central Prefecture." So you had seen that old monster before. It was Hong Wan. After listening to this, Suyu had a general understanding of the 2 sides. "Fine. Then, what order did the Central Prefecture's king give the Black Shadow Guards? Why did you come to the Jinlong continent? Since it's a barren land, which isn't even comparable to one of Jojo's cities, why did you spend so much effort to come here? It's really puzzling." Suyu's heart was filled with anticipation. This was the mystery that he wanted to know the most. The 8th Saint Master hesitated for a moment, but he didn't hesitate for long. He then solemnly said, "We are actually looking for a person." "Who?" Suyu was quite surprised. He couldn't believe that they had come here just to look for a single person. What kind of person could make them so solemn? Suyu couldn't understand. The eighth Saint Master wore a solemn expression as he said, "This person was once a peerless expert in the Central Prefecture's continent. He stood at the apex of Jiuzhou, and his fighting prowess was peerless. He was only a step away from ascending to the throne and becoming the Jiuzhou Emperor." Suyu was shocked. Jiuzhou Emperor? What a great name. The Jinlong continent was just one of Jiuzhou's cities, so he couldn't help but wonder how vast Jiuzhou was. The Jiuzhou Emperor was actually in the Jinlong continent. Such an earth-shattering secret shocked Suyu. Who is he? Such a terrifying person actually existed in the Jinlong continent? Wouldn't he be able to destroy the entire Jinlong continent with just a thought? The eighth Saint Master's eyes flickered as he slowly shook his head. I don't know who he is either. However, what I do know is that he must be somewhere in the Jinlong continent, as his guards still exist. He then added, with your cultivation, you must have a high status in the Jinlong continent. You should have already seen some of his guards. Even if you haven't seen the rest, you should have at least heard of them. The Jiuzhou Emperor's 5 guards? Suyu's heart trembled once again. The Jiuzhou Emperor was originally the Central Prefecture's king, but he was only one of Jiuzhou's kings. It was only after his cultivation reached the apex that he was given the opportunity to be crowned emperor. However, before he ascended to the throne, he was ambushed, and his soul was almost destroyed. Under the protection of his 5 guards, his remnant soul escaped to the Jinlong continent. He took advantage of the Jinlong continent's isolation from Jiuzhou to survive until now. Suyu's eyes flickered. The person who ambushed the Jiuzhou Emperor was the current Central Prefecture's king, right? For some unknown reason, Suyu suddenly thought of Yun Yazi. Could the Jiuzhou Emperor be Yun Yazi? Remnant soul, betrayal, peerless expert. If it wasn't Yun Yazi, who else could it be? That's right. It was the current Central Prefecture's king, my master. The 8th Saint Master was embarrassed. This matter has also been spread in Jiuzhou, but no one dared to question the Central Prefecture's king due to the lack of concrete evidence. Suyu's eyes flickered. Tell me, what happened in the past? The Jiuzhou Emperor's profound strength was unparalleled, so how could an ordinary plot deal with him? The 8th Saint Master nodded. You are wise. The Central Prefecture's king really didn't use an ordinary plot, but the Ghost Clan's great emperor. He then added, it was the Central Prefecture's king who colluded with the Ghost Clan's great emperor and ambushed the Jiuzhou Emperor. The Ghost Clan's great emperor? Suyu's heart trembled. He had heard of this person's name before. It was rumored that he had once led the Ghost Clan to engulf the Jiuzhou continent, slaughtering almost everyone in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. The Ghost Clan's great emperor relied on several underworld pearls to become invincible, and the Jiuzhou continent fell into a crisis. Afterwards, he mysteriously returned to the Ghost Realm, and the Jiuzhou continent's people were saved. Chapter 642. The Central Prefecture's king promised the Ghost Clan's great emperor that he would secretly cooperate with him to kill the Jiuzhou emperor in exchange for the retreat of the Ghost Clan's army. The Ghost Clan's great emperor agreed, so he pretended to lead the Ghost Clan's army to retreat, while the Jiuzhou emperor led the human race to chase after them. However, at the last moment, the Central Prefecture's king, who was the Jiuzhou emperor's disciple, betrayed the Jiuzhou emperor and secretly used the floating life door to summon a demon, which gave the Jiuzhou emperor a fatal blow. This caused the Jiuzhou emperor's weakness to appear, and he was severely injured by the Ghost Clan's great emperor. Under the combined attack of the demon and the Ghost Clan's great emperor, the Jiuzhou emperor's body and soul were almost destroyed. Fortunately, the 5 great guards managed to protect his remnant soul in time. However, they were all severely injured by the Central Prefecture's king's people. Just as they were about to be killed, one of the 5 great guards, Tianjizi, took out the fairy artifact Mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion and detonated it. The power of the fairy artifact's explosion was unimaginable, as it destroyed almost half of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. Even the Ghost Clan's great emperor was scared away. He then added, this explosion caused an extremely strong space fluctuation, which caused many of the experts who were fighting to be sucked into the fairy artifact Mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion space. They were trapped for eternity. They were unwilling to die, so they left behind their own inheritances, which then became the ruins of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. You must have wondered why there were so many different divine master ruins in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. They were all sucked into that battle. Hearing this, Suyu suddenly understood. It was no wonder that there were all kinds of existences in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, such as human experts, ghosts, and demons. Everything made sense now. However, what shocked him was that Tianjizi was one of the 5 great guards of the Jiuzhou Emperor. So, who were the other 4 great guards? Tianjizi's body was destroyed on the spot, and his soul was destroyed. He hid in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion and never showed himself again. It was rumored that he had an emperor-based saint artifact, but it was destroyed along with his death. It was only because of Tianjizi's sacrifice and protection that the 4 great guards were able to escape into the Jinlong continent with the Jiuzhou Emperor's remnant soul. The 8th Saint Master said, at that time, the Jinlong continent was in a sealed state, and people could only enter but not leave. Hence, even if the Central Prefecture's king wanted to chase after them, he couldn't do anything. After escaping to the Jinlong continent, the remnant soul of the Jiuzhou Emperor went into seclusion and never showed itself again. His 4 great guards were also severely injured and were in imminent danger. Hence, they split up and established their own orthodoxies in different parts of the continent, leaving behind their own inheritances while secretly protecting the Jiuzhou Emperor. 3 years have passed in Jiuzhou, but a total of 300 years have passed in the Jinlong continent. In these 100 years, their arrival caused the desolate Jinlong continent to become extremely prosperous. All kinds of martial arts factions emerged one after another, and there were countless techniques. Among them, the 4 great factions could be said to be the birthplaces of martial arts. The Empire of Darkness, the Heavenly Law Alliance, the Dark Parasol's Abyss, and the Dusk Ridge. Hearing the 4 names, Suyu was shocked. Looks like you've already recognized them. That's right, these 4 forces have existed since ancient times. They are the orthodoxies established by the 4 great protectors. The first emperor of the Empire of Darkness, the first world senior of the Heavenly Law Alliance, the sect leader of the Dark Parasol Abyss, and the heartless Taoist of the Dusky Yellow Ridge. They are respectively stationed in the north, south, east, and west of the continent, guarding the Jiuzhou Emperor. It really was them. The Empire of Darkness was an ancient force that had existed for tens of thousands of years. The Heavenly Law Alliance was also a force that had existed for tens of thousands of years. It protected the descendants of the human race in the Jinlong continent. If there is only one Kangwu Abyss that the 8th Saint Master spoke of, then Suyu had been there before. It was the place where he had found Yun Yazi. It was located within the borders of the Lucian faction. It was a relic that had been destroyed countless years ago. Deep underground, Suyu found Yun Yazi, who was trapped in a grave. He also found an extremely frightening jade corpse in a mysterious space. That corpse had been dead for an unknown number of years, but it still gave Suyu the jitters. In the end, Suyu had obtained a jade box from a corpse. Yun Yazi had used it as a place for his soul to reside, and it was still in his embrace. As for the Dusk Ridge and the Heartless Taoist, Suyu remembered the old man in the mural at the Twilight Mountains. His mysterious divine decree of nature had pierced through the sky with a finger. It was profound and mysterious. Suyu's divine decree depended on it. In the end, the old man in the mural was destroyed by a palm print that descended from the sky. The underground relic at the Twilight Mountains could very well be the Dusk Ridge. Suyu had been to these 4 places of origin of the martial path. The Jinlong continent gradually multiplied, and many strong martial artists emerged. However, this did not last for long. 300 years had passed in the Jinlong continent, and 3 years had passed in Jiuzhou. Then, something that destroyed the Jinlong continent happened. After the 18 blessed and heavenly lands used the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion as a place for their disciples to train, the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion was activated. As a space fairy artifact, it could pass through Jiuzhou and the sealed Jinlong continent at the same time. The result was obvious. After the Central Prefecture's king learned of this, he personally led the strong martial artists under him to the Jinlong continent to kill the Jiuzhou emperor. That battle was extremely tragic. After 300 years, the injuries of the four great guards had not only not recovered, but had instead worsened. In a tragic battle, the four great guards had fallen, and their orthodoxy had been destroyed overnight. However, they still could not find the Jiuzhou emperor. Because of this, the Central Prefecture's king ordered the 10 great bright light guards to destroy all the prosperity on the continent, so that they could force the Jiuzhou emperor to appear. The 10 great bright light guards had cultivated the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, which could destroy a prosperous place with one palm. In less than a day, the prosperity that the Jinlong continent had accumulated for 300 years had been destroyed overnight, and it had been razed to the ground. However, the Jiuzhou emperor still did not appear. What they did not know was that the Jiuzhou emperor's body had recovered, and he was at the most crucial moment. He did not notice the situation of the continent until the Blood Emperor, the first guard of the Bright Light Guards, attacked. His heaven-extinguishing divine palm was far superior to the other 9 guards, and he destroyed the Jinlong continent with one palm. 90% of the continent sank, and the remaining 10% was fragmented. Underground magma spurted out, and the remaining 10% of the continent turned into a sea of fire. It was also at this time that the Jiuzhou emperor woke up and attacked angrily. He gave up the opportunity to recover and performed his supreme magical power to expel the Central Prefecture's king and seal the Jinlong continent again. However, at this time, the Jinlong continent was plunged into misery and suffering, and all life was extinguished. It was the Jiuzhou emperor who used his own blood to extinguish the underground magma. His blood was evaporated by the hot magma and turned into water vapor, which condensed into dark clouds in the sky. Then, it turned into rain to nourish the earth. This rain lasted for 100 years in one fell swoop. The collapsed land became a vast sea, and the only land left became the Jinlong continent of today. This was the origin of the Jinlong continent. Hearing this, Suyu gasped in amazement. He finally understood where the palm prints in the ruins had come from. He also finally understood why there were palm prints not only on the land, but also at the bottom of the sea. It was because the sea used to be a part of the Jinlong continent. There was also the Jiuzhou emperor, who used his blood to extinguish the magma, causing the world to reign for 100 years. This existence was like the creator of the world, and he deserved endless respect. However, Suyu paid attention to one person, Xuedi, the Central Prefecture's King Mingguang's first guard, Xuedi. The Xuedi who had severely injured Tianjizi and killed him. Suyu finally understood why Tianjizi had said that the people of the Jinlong continent had the Xuedi's aura. It seemed that the Xuedi's palm had left an aura on the continent, and anyone who was born here would have some sort of aura. What he did not understand was that Tianjizi had said that he had failed to pass the ordeal, and his fairy artifact had been destroyed. The truth was that he had been killed by the Central Prefecture's king. Thinking for a moment, Suyu laughed bitterly in his heart. Tianjizi had his own selfish motives. To prevent Suyu from being afraid of the Central Prefecture's king and not accepting his promise of revenge, he had changed his words and said that he had died during the ordeal. He had only briefly mentioned that he had been killed by the Xuedi. After understanding the ins and outs of the matter, Suyu let out a long sigh. The mystery of the palm prints that had been in his mind for many years had finally been solved. Suyu had also finally learned of a secret that had spanned 10,000 years. It turned out that the Jinlong continent had to face the power of an entire prefecture. How many of you have come this time? Suyu's heart was heavy. The power of the heaven-extinguishing divine palm could easily destroy a prosperous city. This was something that only a divine master could do. In other words, any one of the 10 great bright light guards would be an invincible existence. As if he knew Suyu's worries, the 8th Saint Master said, "This time, only the Black Shadow Guards have come. They are acting in secret." Suyu raised his brows. Oh, why is that? The eighth Saint Master said, "The fight for the position of Emperor of Jojo will begin within 100 years. The various kings are looking for evidence to use against each other. Hence, the Central Prefecture's king would naturally not dare to attack openly like he did hundreds of years ago. Hence, he ordered us, the Black Shadow Guards, to act in secret and capture the Emperor of Jojo. According to the Central Prefecture's king's speculation, the Emperor of Jojo's injuries from the battle 10,000 years ago have worsened. Hence, his cultivation should not be very high. Hence, the Black Shadow Guards should be able to deal with him. Is that so?" Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. "So, are all of you Black Shadow Guards here?" Suyu asked again. The eighth Saint Master shook his head. "No, only me, the seventh Saint Master, the sixth Saint Master, and the fifth Saint Master. There is also the ninth Saint Master, who has been here for 10,000 years. The ninth Saint Master, the old man from the Yu clan, had chased after Suyu in the past. If it was just the Black Shadow Guards, Suyu would still be able to deal with them. Even if he couldn't defeat them, he could still escape. Your Excellency, you probably don't need to fear us with your fighting prowess, but you should still treat the fifth Saint Master with caution. He is a bright light guard's substitute, and he has cultivated the heaven-extinguishing divine palm to a certain degree. His fighting prowess is quite terrifying. Although he is only a level 5 fairy, when he uses the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, even a level 9 fairy would have to treat him with caution." Heaven-extinguishing divine palm? Suyu's heart suddenly became grave. With his current fighting prowess, it would be impossible for him to deal with a level 4 fairy, let alone a level 5 fairy, let alone a level 9 fairy. As Suyu stroked the two mechanical puppets in his bosom, he felt slightly more at ease. Old monster, you had once gifted him 2 puppets, and one of them had a fighting prowess as high as a later stage fairy. So you just didn't know what grade it was in. However, the situation was still not too hopeless. Suyu lowered his head and looked at the First World Senior, who was still roaring in a low voice. He was once one of the Emperor of Jojo's 5 great guards, and his cultivation had probably reached the all-creation realm. But now, he had become a walking corpse. As Suyu looked at the jade box in his hand, he suddenly understood something. The Dark Parasol Sect's Master's corpse had a jade box. The First World Senior's corpse also had a jade box. The Yellow Dusk Mountains Taoist had left a floating life door in the stone wall, which was in Suyu's soul. In other words, the other 2 jade boxes also had a floating life door. The floating life door was used to summon a true demon. Chapter 643. As the eighth Saint Master followed Suyu's gaze, his heart thumped, and he wore an embarrassed look on his face. This jade box is called a magic box, and its origin is unknown. After a meteorite fell into the Central Prefecture, it was discovered by someone. There were 5 of them in total, and after they discovered the floating life door in the jade box, the Jojo Emperor sealed 4 of them, while the last one was given to the Central Prefecture's king to investigate. However, no one expected that the Central Prefecture's king would unravel the magic box's secret and summon the true demon, which severely injured the Jojo Emperor. This time, we were ordered by the Central Prefecture's king to collect the other 4 magic boxes. The jade box in the hands of the First World Senior is one of the 4 great magic boxes. This time, we attacked the Heavenly Law Alliance for it. The devil's hair that Suyu had encountered in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion was probably the hair that had fallen from this true demon. If even a single strand of hair was so terrifying, then how powerful would the actual body be? How do I summon it? Suyu's heart became slightly excited. If he could figure out the secret behind opening the floating life door, wouldn't he become invincible? However, things didn't go as Suyu had hoped. The eighth Saint Master chuckled bitterly and said, "I'm afraid that only the Central Prefecture's king knows such a secret. It's impossible for it to be leaked." In this regard, Suyu was a little disappointed, but he had expected it. How could the Central Prefecture's king easily reveal the operation method of the true demon who could seriously injure the Jojo Emperor? Looking at the jade box, Suyu secretly nodded. "I have already told you everything that you wanted to know. I hope that you can spare my life," the eighth Saint Master said nervously. Suyu nodded without hesitation. Yes, I can spare your life, but you know too much, so I can't let you go. From now on, you will stay in the Heavenly Law Alliance and guard the Jinlong continent. Shua, when he finished speaking, a seal formed by the fusion of thunderbolts and souls floated above Suyu's palm. The eighth Saint Master let out a bitter laugh. It was as if he knew that this would be the result. He opened up his soul and accepted the restriction. As soon as the Great Thunder Heart technique entered his body, the eighth Saint Master realized how powerful it was. The soul within the seal was closely connected to Suyu, and as long as Suyu willed it, he could ignite the lightning and destroy his soul. Wuhan greets Master. The eighth Saint Master knelt down on one knee. You could just call me Young Master. Hearing the word Master from a fairy realm cultivator's mouth was quite troublesome for Suyu. Suyu nodded. Fine. You want to go out with me to settle the Heavenly Law Alliance's matter? The two of them tapped the ground with the tips of their toes, grabbed the First World Senior, and flew through the air like swallows. From a bird's-eye view, the Heavenly Law Alliance, which was 100,000 feet large, had already melted into a pool of unknown liquid, forming a 1,000 feet wide lake. All the items in the warship sank to the bottom of the lake. The once glorious Heavenly Law Alliance, which had persevered for tens of thousands of years, had been reduced to a swamp. There were more than 10,000 sailors who had survived the disaster. All of them looked haggard as they stood around in a miserable and disorderly manner. There were the cries of relatives and friends who had fallen, the desolate faces of homeless people, the loss of hope for the future, and the helplessness and panic of losing their homes. Fortunately, even though the Heavenly Law Alliance had been destroyed, Long Jueshin's influence as the Alliance Master was still present, and he managed to gather everyone together. Elder Su. Long Jueshin walked over and greeted him respectfully. Suyu's heart sank slightly. How are the losses? Long Jueshin's heart was filled with sorrow. There were several hundred casualties. The warship was destroyed, and all the items in it were destroyed. Apart from the items that everyone brought with them, the rest of the items have sunk into the lake. Old Chun is currently leading a group of people to save them. Can't the warship be restored? Suyu looked at the liquid in the lake, his eyes filled with curiosity. Long Jueshin shook his head. The warship's material is the Nine Heavens' mysterious water. Before it was refined, it was in a liquid state. After it was refined, it would turn into a solid state. However, this kind of water can only be refined once, after which it will turn into a liquid again. In the end, it will solidify and become unusable. Sure enough, the 1,000 feet wide lake was gradually solidifying. Old Chun and the others, who were trying to salvage it, hurriedly left the lake. Crack! After a short while, the lake, which had been rippling with water a moment ago, had turned into a giant gray rock. Alliance Master. Old Chun and the other elders all wore miserable expressions as they held a few items in their hands. We only managed to salvage these items from the storage room. The 15 elders had only managed to salvage a few bottles of elixirs and some precious cultivation techniques, as well as a few divine weapons. These items weren't even enough for 10,000 people to use for half a day. As for the remaining items, they had all been petrified by the liquid. Even if they managed to break the petrified lake, it would be useless. Is this all that's left? Long Jueshin's lips were trembling, and his expression was bleak. The Heavenly Law Alliance had really been destroyed by him. Alliance Master, please give us your instructions, Old Chin said. At this moment, the 10,000 people had nowhere to stay, as they had lost their leader. Long Jueshin laughed at himself. What instructions do I need? Without any resources to use, without a place to stay, the Heavenly Law Alliance's morale was already low. At this moment, Xiao Sui and the others looked at each other. Then, Xiao Sui said in a sorrowful tone, Alliance Master, the Heavenly Law Alliance's destruction isn't entirely your fault. You have already tried your best, so you don't need to blame yourself. Now, we are still in danger, so let's quickly disperse and go our separate ways. Their future fates will all depend on their own luck. Hearing this, the anxious crowd became even more restless. They started discussing among themselves, and the situation seemed to be spiraling out of control. Since an elder had mentioned disbanding, it meant that the Heavenly Law Alliance was really about to be disbanded. "Shut up!" Old Chun shouted angrily. At such a critical moment, not only did Xiao Sui not try his best to calm the crowd, but he even suggested disbanding. This caused them to panic, which was really hateful. Xiao Sui's expression became serious, and he shouted coldly, "Elder Chun, please recognize reality. Because of your incompetence, the Heavenly Law Alliance's disbandment is inevitable. Everyone should take this opportunity to find a place to stay, as it would be better than having no one to rely on." Old Chin became even angrier. "Wait, are you saying that the Heavenly Law Alliance's disbandment is because of us?" Xiao Sui snorted. "Isn't that the case? Isn't it obvious who destroyed the Heavenly Law Heart?" His word made Old Chin angry, but he couldn't say anything. Facing a fairy, even if they had 100 Heavenly Law Hearts, they wouldn't be able to protect them. "If you have nothing else to say, then shut up." Xiao Sui curled his lips and looked at Long Jueshin. "Alliance Master, please give the order. It's for everyone's good." Long Jueshin's heart was trembling. What Xiao Sui said might be more reasonable, as he was already unable to protect 10,000 people. He didn't have an invulnerable warship, nor did he have enough resources to provide for 10,000 people. For everyone's good? Isn't it for your own good? At this moment, a cold voice transmitted from behind Long Jueshin. Swoosh! At the same time, the 8th Saint Master Wu Hen's shadow flickered, and he easily took out several items from Xiao Sui's clothes. Surprisingly, there were 10 bottles of precious elixirs, several immortal-level cultivation techniques, and several divine weapons. Even in such a situation, he still wants to make a fortune before leaving. Even if the Heavenly Law Alliance doesn't perish today, it will one day be destroyed. Even Wu Hen couldn't bear to watch this any longer, so he sneered. Old Shin took a closer look and couldn't help but fly into a rage. "Xiao Sui, you dare to take advantage of our misfortune? How dare you hide the loot for yourself?" Long Jueshin was even angrier. The Heavenly Law Alliance had yet to disband, and he, Long Jueshin, was still alive. Yet, Xiao Sui dared to be so unbridled. Seeing this, the 10,000 Alliance members went into an uproar. It was no wonder that he was so eager to disband the Heavenly Law Alliance. It turned out that he wanted to make a fortune before leaving. His actions had infuriated the public. Such a person isn't fit to be an elder. I used to think that Elder Xiao Sui was an upright and outspoken person, but it turns out that he's just a hypocrite. It was as if everyone had found an outlet to vent their anger, so they all cursed and scolded Xiao Sui. At that moment, Xiao Sui had fallen into a situation where he was deserted by everyone. Xiao Sui's expression turned ugly. He couldn't understand how Su Yu had managed to discover that he had carefully hidden the loot. How could he know that Su Yu's seemingly bright eyes couldn't see anything? What he could see were the soul eyes, which had a penetrating power. Good. Our Heavenly Law Alliance actually produced such a scum. Long Jueshin was obviously angered. You indeed don't have the right to continue being an elder of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Now, as the Alliance Master, I announce that you will be stripped of your elder position. Now scram immediately. The Heavenly Law Alliance doesn't need you. Xiao Sui's cheeks twitched, hiding his anger. In his mind, he had contributed so much to the Heavenly Law Alliance. Even if he didn't have any merits, he had still put in a lot of effort. Yet, he was being expelled just because of a few items. All right, I'll leave. Xiao Sui waved his sleeves and left. He had thought that he would leave, but he didn't expect that he would lose his reputation and leave under the scorn of the Heavenly Law Alliance. However, not long after he left, Su Yu said, "What is this? Let me have a look." Su Yu furrowed his brows as he stared at a sealed scroll among the items that Wu Hen had found. Wu Hen was startled and lowered his head to take a look. When his gaze fell upon the scroll, he said in surprise, "A space scroll? Although it's crude, its material seems to be somewhat special." He didn't finish his sentence, but instead handed it over to Su Yu. Su Yu grabbed it and examined it for a moment. He then asked, Alliance Master Long, the scroll's material is the same as the battleships, isn't it? Do the elders also have such a material? Long Jueshin was startled. As he examined the scroll, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Nine Heavens' mysterious water? Impossible! Such a material is a top secret in the Heavenly Law Alliance, and it's impossible for it to be given to the elders. Only the Alliance Masters have access to it, and it's impossible for him to enter the storage room. Even a grade 1 fairy like the devilish purple-haired youth couldn't enter, let alone Xiao Sui. Since that was the case, where did Xiao Sui get the material? Everyone was puzzled at the same time. Xiao Sui's body stiffened, and his heart thumped wildly. The four elders' expressions became unsightly, as they were extremely nervous. Xiao Sui, where did you get the Nine Heavens' mysterious water? You better give me an explanation for this matter before you leave. Long Jueshin's eyes flickered with a cold light. Xiao Sui rolled his eyes and turned around. He then snorted and said, "I got it from somewhere, and I didn't steal it from the storage room. Do I still need to give you an explanation?" For a moment, Long Jueshin couldn't help but be shaken. Could it be that there was another source of Nine Heavens' mysterious water in the Jinlong continent? Seeing how shameless Xiao Sui was, Long Jueshin couldn't fly into a rage. After all, he couldn't just casually punish him in front of everyone. Chapter 644. Hearing this, Long Jueshin coldly stared at Xiao Sui. At the same time, he flicked his wrist and unfurled the scroll. Within the scroll, there were pavilions, terraces, and buildings. The scenery was beautiful, and there were fairies dancing and singing. That dancer is the Western continent's top female genius. Hwantong? Why is she in the space painting? Also, that is Lulu from the Southern continent. Also, after a short while, all the women in the scroll were recognized. They were all famous and beautiful women, and they were all young women that the Heavenly Law Alliance paid special attention to and protected. At this moment, all of them were gathered in the scroll. Xiao Sui. Long Jueshin gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with anger. He did not need to explain the situation to understand why these women were in the scroll. He was afraid that these women had all become Xiao Sui's slaves, either because they were trying to curry favor with him or because they had been threatened. This was the rule of the Heavenly Law Alliance. No elder was allowed to touch the younger generation, or else they would be killed without mercy. Thousands of years ago, there might have been people who tried to do so, but they all ended up dead. As such, the elders of the later generations did not dare to cross the line again. However, Xiao Sui dared to do so. All of you come out. Long Jueshin was furious. He used his vital energy to activate the scroll, and a vortex appeared. As he shook his hand, the space within the scroll shook violently, and all the women inside were forcefully shaken out. The women, led by Hwantong, suddenly turned pale as they faced the onlookers. At the same time, the four elders who had slept with them also turned pale. Plop! One of the red-nosed elders was so shocked that he fell to the ground. This strange situation immediately attracted Long Jueshin's attention. He squinted his eyes and asked, "Elder Wanli, can you tell me what you were doing?" He was so close to Xiao Sui, so it was hard to guarantee that he would not be suspected of taking advantage of the younger generation. Plop! Plop! Three strange sounds could be heard. When Long Jueshin looked over, he saw the three elders beside him kneeling on the ground, cold sweat dripping down their backs. They all looked terrified. What are you all doing?" Long Jueshin was so angry that he laughed. It turned out that the red-nosed elder was not the only one involved. "Alliance Master, please spare us. We were forced by Xiao Sui." One of the elders immediately kowtowed and begged for mercy. It would have been fine if they had not tried to explain themselves, but they had insisted on doing so. This caused Long Jueshin to fly into a rage. Could it be that he was the one who tied you up? How could Long Jueshin not be angry when 5 elders tried to break the seal at the same time? However, what made him startled was that the 4 elders looked at each other, kowtowed, and begged for mercy. "Please have mercy, Alliance Leader. We are talking about another matter." The red-nosed elder pointed at the scroll, and said, "This item is called the Small Building Pavilion. The material used to make it was dug out by Xiao Sui from the middle of the warship. Because of this, the middle part, which is said to be the hardest part, was easily broken. All of this is because Xiao Sui dug out most of the materials. We couldn't resist the temptation and were caught by him. Therefore, at the most crucial moment, we couldn't explain the matter in time. Please have mercy, Alliance Master." What? The crowd burst into an intense uproar once more. An unprecedented shock arose. No wonder our battleship was destroyed. So, the middle part was dug out by someone, and it was done by an elder. The Heavenly Law Alliance has been destroyed, and many of our friends and family have died. We have no home to return to. Is this all because of Xiao Sui's enjoyment? Kill him, kill him, kill. At that moment, the crowd roared angrily, their hatred for Xiao Sui. Xiao Sui had single-handedly destroyed the Heavenly Law Alliance. Puff. Long Jueshin was extremely angry. He was already injured, so when he heard about the news, his blood rushed to his head. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He closed his eyes and was so angry that he spat out blood and fainted on the spot. Who could remain calm after knowing that their 10,000 years of work had been destroyed by a person who only wanted to enjoy himself? Alliance Master. The crowd was shocked. Taking advantage of the chaos, Xiao Sui, whose face was pale, pointed at the void and flew into the distance. However, he had only left for a short while when he felt his shoulder being grabbed by a hand. Then the world spun around him. When his feet landed on the ground again, he was in front of Su Yu. Wuhan's hand pressed down on his shoulder lightly. Hee, such a reckless parasite. It's really rare to see someone who single-handedly destroyed an entire faction. Su Yu supported Long Jueshin as the dragon head. He was unconscious, so there was no one to take charge of the situation. Elder Su, please take charge of the situation. If Alliance Master Long knows about it, he will not object. Old Chin was also very anxious. Long Jueshin had fainted, so if there was no one with enough authority to take charge of the situation, they would immediately fall apart. Although he was experienced, not everyone respected him, let alone the other elders. Now, only Su Yu, who had killed 52 Crystal's half-fairies, forced a Grade 1 fairy to death, subdued a Grade 2 fairy, and saved the First World Senior, could suppress the crowd. Su Yu furrowed his brows. He was not willing to take charge of the situation, but it seemed like he had no other choice. All right, while Alliance Master Long is unconscious, I will temporarily take charge of the Heavenly Law Alliance's affairs. Once he wakes up, I will leave, Su Yu said. As soon as he finished speaking, the noisy crowd quietened down. Many pairs of eyes looked at Su Yu with deep respect. They were even more respectful than Long Jueshin. In their eyes, the youth in front of them was a monster that was even more mysterious than the Supreme Fairies. The pressure he exerted on them was no less than a mountain. At this moment, not to mention the noise, they didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Such an effect surprised Su Yu. After all, his attack had been very intimidating. Now, I will take care of them on behalf of Alliance Master Long. Su Yu's cold gaze fell on Xiao Sui and the other 4 people. Xiao Sui was scared witless, but when he faced Su Yu, he felt an indescribable sense of confidence. After all, from their previous 2 encounters, it seemed like Su Yu was afraid of him. As he thought of this, Xiao Sui's expression turned serious as he snorted. "Little kid, what right do you have to take care of me on behalf of Alliance Master Long? I have worked tirelessly for the Heavenly Law Alliance for half of my life. Even if I have not done anything meritorious, I have worked hard. Do you think an outsider like you can take care of me? Even if I have made a mistake, it was unintentional. Alliance Master Long has yet to convict me, so what right do you have to take care of me?" His righteous and angry shouts caused the crowd to be secretly angry. If someone who did not know what had happened was here, they might really think that Su Yu had intentionally killed a kind-hearted person because of some insignificant mistake. They did not know that what Xiao Sui had committed was a heaven-defying crime that would result in his body and soul being destroyed. In his own words, It was an unintentional act. However, the crowd was also relieved that no matter how Xiao Sui tried to argue, he would not be able to live. Everyone present wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood. What you said makes sense. I will not attack you. Unexpectedly, Suyu let him go. You may leave. Xiao Sui was ecstatic. Suyu was indeed afraid of him. Without hesitation, Xiao Sui tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew away. Old thief, where do you think you are going? Some people could not stand it anymore and try to stop him. However, Suyu calmly waved his hand and said, let him go. As soon as he gave the order, the person who tried to stop him felt a great pressure and immediately stopped. The crowd was stunned, confused. Why would he let go of such a sinful bastard? Was he protecting Xiao Sui, or was he really afraid of him? They could not understand Suyu's actions, nor could they agree with him. After all, he was not a member of the Heavenly Law Alliance, so he could not understand the pain of their families being destroyed. Unknowingly, many people had become disheartened, hoping that an outsider could rebuild the Heavenly Law Alliance was just wishful thinking. As for the four of you, Suyu lowered his head and looked at them, who were still kneeling on the ground. His gaze turned cold, and his figure flickered as he tapped the top of each of their heads. After that, for miserable groans could be heard, and the four of them fell to the ground dead. For your own selfish reasons, you concealed the truth, which led to the destruction of the Heavenly Law Alliance and the death of countless people. You committed an unforgivable crime, and according to the law, you should be killed. His actions stunned the crowd once again. They had thought that, according to Suyu's attitude, even if he let go of the culprit Xiao Sui, the four of them would still be safe. They had never thought that he would kill them all. Swoosh! At that moment, Wu Hun's shadow dissipated, and his real body flew up into the sky, blocking Xiao Sui's way. What are you doing? Xiao Sui, who was still ecstatic, felt his heart skip a beat. Wu Hun laughed coldly and disdainfully. Of course, I am following the orders of my master to execute you. What? Wait, he said himself that he wouldn't do it. Before he could finish speaking, Xiao Sui's heart sank. Suyu had only said that he wouldn't do it, but he had never said that he wouldn't allow others to do it. At that moment, Suyu's cold voice could be heard. Finally, Elder Xiao Sui, you dug up the warship's materials, destroyed it, and imprisoned a young woman. According to the law, your body and soul will be destroyed, and you will be executed. Wu Hun sighed. My master didn't do anything to you because he didn't want to dirty his own hands. He didn't allow the Alliance members to touch you because he didn't want them to dirty their hands. Only I can do this kind of work, even though I feel that it's dirty. Prepare yourself, your body and soul will be destroyed, and you won't die in a short period of time. You should really regret doing such a stupid thing. Swoosh! Wu Hun took out a flying knife, and with a stunned look, flew over. As the shadow flickered, Xiao Sui screamed in pain. A piece of flesh had been cut off from his arm, and blood was spilling everywhere. Then the shadow flickered again, and another piece of flesh was cut off. The same scene played out for the time it took to drink half a cup of tea. At that moment, blood rained down from the sky, accompanied by screams and pleas for mercy. Wu Hun only stopped when all that was left of Xiao Sui was his skeleton and internal organs. The crowd felt a chill in their hearts. This was the cruelest punishment in the Heavenly Law Alliance, the destruction of both body and soul. His body was being destroyed inch by inch, and his soul was collapsing in pain. Finally, both his body and soul were destroyed. This, in the words of mortals, was death by 1,000 cuts. When the punishment was over, everyone looked at Suyu with even more respect. They had thought that Suyu was really afraid of Xiao Sui, but now they knew that this was not the case. The four red-nosed elders did not die in pain, but Xiao Sui had to bear the pain of death by 1,000 cuts. Suyu's punishment was severe, and he was definitely not a merciful person. Chapter 645. Alliance Master Su, what should we do next? Old Chun had changed the way he addressed Suyu. Since Suyu had temporarily replaced Long Juexin, he was naturally the acting Alliance Master. Everyone became spirited as Old Chin's question was what they were most concerned about. They were homeless, so finding a safe place to stay was their top priority. Suyu swept the crowd with his gaze. Most of the 10,000 people were geniuses who had come from all over the continent. Their talents were outstanding, but their cultivations were quite low. Everyone felt that it would be a difficult problem to settle them down. Suyu furrowed his brows and asked without hesitation, "What should we do next? We are the Jinlong continent's masters, so don't you find it ridiculous to ask such a question?" Old Chin's face became flushed. They were the Jinlong continent's natives, yet they were being forced by outsiders to the point where they didn't have a place to stay. "Alliance Master Su, what do you mean?" Old Chun asked in surprise. "Of course, we want to take back our land." Suyu's eyes shone brightly. "Alliance Master Su, do you want to start a war with the otherworldly realm?" Old Chun was startled. Suyu nodded. "Apart from that, will the otherworldly realm's people return the land they have occupied to us?" They didn't try to hide their conversation. After learning that they were about to start another war with the Heavenly Law Alliance, the crowd became restless. Do we really want to start a war with the otherworldly realm? Even when we were at our peak, we suffered a crushing defeat when we united the continent's many factions, let alone now. Someone asked. "Indeed, I hope that Alliance Master Su will reconsider this matter. Our younger generation's power and battle experience are still at an early stage, so it will be difficult for us to exert our full power on the battlefield. We aren't afraid of death, so we don't have to die in vain." "That's right, Alliance Master. Our top priority is to find a place to stay, and it won't be too late for us to come up with a plan to restore our country once we have accumulated enough power." In the end, even Old Chun couldn't help but waver. He deeply doubted Suyu's ability to manage the situation. They were so weak, and if they started a war with the otherworldly realm, wouldn't they just be courting their own destruction? "Alliance Master Su, where there's life, there's hope. We should take our time to consider this matter, or we could discuss it together after Alliance Master Long wakes up. If we do it so hastily, we might not be able to convince the masses," Old Chin advised. Suyu's face gradually turned cold as he looked at the furious crowd and the terrified and uneasy faces. A pair of eyes that were as deep as the stars slowly emitted a chill. Wherever his gaze passed, the crowd could clearly feel a chill, and they all quietened down. In just a short while, the boiling crowd gradually calmed down under Suyu's cold gaze. "Are you done?" Suyu asked calmly. Only his voice reverberated in the vast wilderness. No one responded. As he looked at them, Suyu didn't hide his disappointment at all. "There is something that I wanted to say a long time ago." Everyone's hearts were filled with anxiety. What did their Alliance Master want to say to them? Are you really the future of a human race? Suyu looked at them, then looked at the distant sky. In his eyes, there was only the distant horizon, and he couldn't even see their shadows. These words caused many of the younger generation to feel disgust. What did he mean? Disdain their aptitude? Some of the younger generations were even more dissatisfied. "You were only born 3 years earlier than me. You entered the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion and obtained some good fortune. My aptitude might not be worse than yours. Humph, I admit that you are powerful and your name has shaken a continent. But aren't you too arrogant to belittle us like this?" Many of the younger generation were filled with respect and jealousy towards Suyu. Who would be willing to admit that someone of the same age, or even younger than them, was already standing at the peak of the continent? When your home was occupied by the enemy, what were you doing? When your family and friends were being slaughtered by the enemy, what were you doing? When your women were being ravaged by the enemy, what were you doing? You were hiding in the Heavenly Law Alliance, in a place where you could live a peaceful life. You could stay out of the matter, and you could live a miserable life. When I mentioned that I wanted to restore the world, save your family and friends, and take back your women, how did you respond? Suyu's words were solemn and dignified. They were distant and indistinct, but they were like bolts of lightning that bombarded the depths of everyone's hearts, shaking their souls. Yes, what were they doing? When their factions were destroyed, when their brothers and sisters were being slaughtered, when their senior and junior sisters were being ravaged, where were they? In a safe place in the Heavenly Law Alliance, They had quietly watched their family and friends, their brothers and sisters, as well as their factions being ravaged by the calamity. As for them, they considered themselves to be the future of the human race, so they pretended that they didn't see it and hid in the Heavenly Law Alliance. If you're the future of a human race, then I can only say that the human race already has no future. Suyu's words were sharp and forceful. The true hope of the human race is to shed blood for your family and friends, for your women, and for the people and things that you love. Even if you are left with your last breath, you should still fight for them until the end. You shouldn't only think about how to protect yourselves and how to get through the calamity. He then added, rather than saying that you are the future of the human race, it would be better to say that you are a group of cowards who are deceiving yourselves. His words struck the nail on the head and pierced their numb hearts. All along, they had been using their status as the future of a human race to hide their cowardice and enjoy the protection of the Heavenly Law Alliance. However, at this moment, Suyu had mercilessly exposed them. Although there were 10,000 people present, the whole place was deathly silent. No one spoke, as they were all speechless. No one would say that they were cowards, not even the Heavenly Law Alliance, as protecting them was their responsibility. Their family and friends wouldn't, as they had placed their hopes on them. Their women and men wouldn't, as they hoped that they, who had escaped, could stay out of this matter and live safely. Only Suyu's blunt words had awakened them from their own lies. They were indeed a group of cowards. They were cowards who had seen their homes being destroyed and their families vanish. Yet they chose to hide themselves. Old Chin sighed silently. He was speechless as he silently agreed with Suyu's words. In fact, it wasn't just the younger generation that was like this, as even the older generation's elders were deceiving themselves. Xiao Sui, for example, believed that the Heavenly Law Alliance would never collapse, and he was enjoying his peaceful life in the Heavenly Law Alliance. Even when the continent was in turmoil, he didn't feel any sense of crisis. The Heavenly Law Alliance, which had stood for 10,000 years, had paralyzed their hearts, and they had unknowingly turned into cowards in their turtle shells. Alliance Master, let me join the battle. A hoarse voice echoed from the crowd. A young man, who seemed to be in his 30s, stood up from an inconspicuous corner. His empty left sleeve fluttered in the cold wind, and it seemed like he had gone through many years of grief. A haggard, yellow cheeks, which were covered with stubble, appeared before everyone's eyes. His face, which was supposed to be handsome, was now gloomy and dull, and even his eyes were bloodshot. A stream of turbid tears rolled down from her right eye, flowed down her cheek, and dripped onto the ground, splashing into wet tear stains like flower petals. Only one of his eyes was weeping, as his left eye had already lost its sight. The South Pole Mountain's young master, Du Ming. Someone recognized him. The South Pole Mountain's young master was annihilated in a single night, and not a single person survived. That day was Du Ming's wedding day, and his bride committed suicide in front of him to preserve her chastity. His father and mother fought their way out for him, but they ended up lying in a pool of their own blood. He was the only one who managed to escape, but he also lost his left arm and left eye. Ever since he came to the Heavenly Law Alliance, he has never uttered a single word. Du Ming walked out of the crowd with his back facing the crowd. His crippled figure gave them an indescribable feeling. Both my parents died, and Yin died a miserable death. I'm the only one left in this world, and I've always wondered, do I have to run away for my whole life? Is it really right to hide in the Heavenly Law Alliance and become the future of the human race? Without me, who will take revenge for my parents? Without me, who will pay for Yin Er's blood? I've already run away once, and I won't run away a second time. Alliance Master, please let me join the battle. Although I am crippled, I am still alive. Let me use my last hand and my last bit of life to kill an enemy for my parents and Yin. Let me use my last eyes to witness the true future of the human race. The lonely silhouette and the hysterical cries formed a bleak picture. It was as if they saw a hero burning his life to shed his last drop of hot blood for his loved ones, and all those he loved. It was dazzling, and it pierced their hearts. At this moment, His figure represented the true future of the human race. Alliance Master, let me join the battle. I will use the sword in my hand and the blood in my heart to avenge my teacher. A figure walked out of the crowd. Let me join the battle. Senior brother treated me like his own brother, and he died for me. I will fight for him, and I will fight with my life. Me too. My junior sister's blood cannot be shed in vain. Me too. Me too. Also, more and more people walked out, and more eyes were lit up. More and more figures were shining. It was as if they had once again found their goal, and they had once again found the meaning of life. At this moment, they were the true hope of the human race. The crowd was moved, and their blood, which had been silent for a long time, was boiling. The voices of the crowd converged, and their mighty aura was like a thunderclap that reached the clouds. Old Chin was so shocked that he was speechless. In his entire life, he had never seen the Heavenly Law Alliance so united and boiling. Even he, who was over 100 years old, was moved. His heart, which had always been as calm as an ancient well, started to beat, and his blood started to boil. Alliance Master, please use this old man's life to your heart's content. Old Chun laughed, and his laughter was unprecedentedly cheerful and open-minded. Upon seeing this, Wuhan was shocked, and his face stiffened. Wuhan could feel a torrent of willpower from them. Throughout the past 3 years, during the war between the Zhenlong and the otherworldly world, he had never seen such a terrifying willpower. It was a willpower that was willing to sacrifice one's life for oneself, to shed one's blood, and to fight bravely. Chapter 646. He suddenly rejoiced that Su Yu had taken him in. If he ever met such a group of hot-blooded youths on the battlefield, he did not know what would have happened to him. At the same time, he looked at Su Yu with even more respect. Su Yu's charisma was evident in the fact that he had managed to motivate a fugitive with just a few words. Su Yu's indomitable and courageous style was definitely not an act. It was a style that was ingrained in his bones. Such a person's achievements, even in the central prefecture, wouldn't be low. Wu Hen's heart shuddered as he secretly gave Su Yu a fair evaluation. The response of the crowd shook the heavens and the earth. Su Yu was high up in the sky, like an invincible commander. A pair of deep eyes shot out boundless majestic light. All right, those who are willing to fight for your homes, your friends, and your women, follow me. Use our hot blood, use our willpower, and kill our way out of this world. A loud roar rumbled like thunder. Kill, 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 kill. The unified roar was like a torrent rolling through the sky, shaking everything within 100 miles. Then, a rumbling sound shook the heavens, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were rolling through the sky. Looking from afar, a huge black cloud was charging towards the north with a mighty aura. In the northern continent, the Palace Master's mansion in the central city of the Empire of Darkness was heavily guarded. The manor was heavily guarded. The purple-robed guards and the red-robed guards solemnly guarded the four corners of the manor. The blades in their hands shone with a cold light that shone on their solemn faces. Their killing intent was exceptionally heavy. The people of the Empire of Darkness were in a hurry, carrying all kinds of information as they rushed in to report the latest battle situation. Palace Master Nanguang, how is today's battle situation? In the palace, a red-robed elder had a serious expression. As he spoke, the green mole at the corner of his mouth moved up and down along with his aged skin. Sitting beside him was a middle-aged woman in a purple robe. She had an ordinary appearance, but her eyes shone brightly. She was quickly reading the news reports that had arrived. She was extremely focused and meticulous. Inspector Baiyun, please allow me to organize the news. The middle-aged woman lifted her head to take a quick glance, then immediately got busy. The red-robed old man with a mole at the corner of his mouth was the inspector of the Empire of Darkness. He was in charge of supervising the four great empires' sub-palace. Yes, you must read it carefully, grasp the latest battle situation, and immediately report to me. Inspector Baiyun sat down, looking like a commander. Palace Master Nanguang furrowed her brows. She was well aware that she hadn't treated Inspector Bayun well, which had made him unhappy. However, with the urgency of the war, how could she have the extra time to flatter this inspector? Yes, Nan Guang replied curtly. Since she had no time to deal with Zhang Xian, Nan Guang continued flipping through the book and pondering over her next move. Inspector Bayun looked calm, but he was actually feeling uneasy. After sitting for a while, he stood up and paced back and forth in the hall with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked very anxious and uneasy. Half a cup of tea later, something big has happened. Nan Guang raised her head and frowned. Inspector Bayun abruptly turned to look at him. Speak. How's the battle going? Nan Guang's expression turned ugly as she said in a deep voice, I'm afraid that we'll have to give up the Northern Continent's sub-palace within 3 days. What do you mean? Inspector Bayun's expression darkened. Palace Master Nan Guang took out a few pieces of jade. According to the latest news, the enemy has already invaded the sub-palace's 10 domains. I'm afraid that the surrounding domains will soon fall. The enemy is actually this fast? Does this mean that the Phoenix Cabinet, the only faction in the Northern Continent that is still resisting, has already fallen? Inspector Bayun's expression kept changing. The enemy's main force has always been concentrated in the Phoenix Cabinet. Now that they've sent their army south, it must mean that the Phoenix Cabinet's battle has ended. Upon hearing this, Palace Master Nan Guang's heart sank. The great protective spell formation of the Phoenix Cabinet is extremely powerful. Even a grade 2 fairy wouldn't be able to break through it. If there wasn't a spy who broke through it, I'm afraid that it wouldn't have been broken so easily. Previously, the otherworldly army had been attacking it for a long time. Why did it suddenly break? There must be something fishy going on here. Palace Master Nan Guang had a bad premonition. We'd better retreat quickly. The Northern Continent sub-palace doesn't have a strong defense like the Phoenix Cabinet. If it's invaded, it'll take them at most half a month, or at least 2 days. By then, they'll be able to reach the center of the continent, and will suffer heavy casualties. However, Inspector Bayun didn't hesitate. Don't retreat. This is an order from the Seven Lords' Palace. Inspector Bayun shouted. Palace Master Nan Guang's expression changed. Seven Lords' Palace? Have they all woken up? Outsiders might only know about the Empire of Darkness's Seven Lords of Darkness, but not many people knew that there was another mysterious Seven Lords' Palace in the Empire of Darkness. The Seven Lords of Darkness were the previous generation's Seven Lords of Darkness, and some were even older than that. When the Seven Lords of Darkness passed the age of youth, they would automatically withdraw from the ranks of the Seven Lords of Darkness. They were the nominal disciples of the King of Darkness, so they weren't suitable to hold any positions in the Empire. After they withdrew, they would join the Seven Lords' Palace, where they would cultivate peacefully and not care about the outside world. Unless something big happened, they wouldn't easily come out of seclusion. Now that the continent was in a critical moment of life and death, the legendary Seven Lords' Palace had still opened. No one knew how powerful the previous generation's Seven Lords of Darkness were. After all, every single one of them had the potential to dominate the continent. This was especially true in the past 3 years, when the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had suddenly become 10 times denser. No one knew whether they would be able to break through the immortal realm and become fairies. Now that the King of Darkness was in seclusion, there was no news of him. Thus, the Seven Lords' Palace's opening would undoubtedly lead the Empire's affairs. That's right. This is an order from the Seven Lords' Palace. The Northern Continent is the only branch of the Empire of Darkness left. If the Northern Continent is destroyed, the Empire of Darkness will lose all its face. Thus, you would rather die in battle than run away. Inspector Bayun said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Palace Master Nan Guang's face turned pale. She bit her red lips and said angrily, The Seven Lords' Palace wants us to wait for our deaths here. Inspector Bayun raised his eyebrows, and his gaze turned cold. You dare to question the Seven Lords' Palace? As the Palace Master of the Southern Continent, you should have been executed for running away without a fight. However, the Seven Lords' Palace saw that you were loyal to the Empire, So they ordered you to take over Ling Xiaoyan's position and continue to be the palace master of the northern continent. The Seven Lords Palace has done you a favor by allowing you to live until now. Now that you have died in battle, do you still have any complaints? Had the Seven Lords Palace become active 3 years ago? Palace Master Nan Guang's heart trembled. It was no wonder that she had been transferred from the southern continent to the northern continent. However, what Palace Master Nan Guang didn't know was that the northern continent sub-palace was very difficult to deal with. Putting aside Ling Xiaoyan's current whereabouts, just the 10 domains and 5 skies alone was a headache. More than half of the 10 great sub-palace masters had perished. The first vice-palace master, Shun Kong, the second vice-palace master, Lu Li, the third vice-palace master, and Fong, as well as vice-palace master Xiao Guang and vice-palace master Zhang Jian had all perished. Only Feng Qing, Shui Yao, and Hua Zhilan, who were ranked lower, were left. What was most regrettable was that almost all the deputy hall masters were killed by a single person. The missing deputy palace master. Deputy Palace Master Inu. Back then, if not for Inspector Bai He and Lore Bai Luo, the Palace Master of the Inu Manor would not have disappeared until today. He is the true genius, a genius that does not lose to any of the 7 Lords of Darkness. Today, with the news that Bai Luo and the Divine Eagle had perished, what had happened in the past had already been settled. Who was in the right and who was in the wrong? So what if he is here? He is merely a junior of the immortal realm. He cannot change anything. Inspector Bai Yun was unconcerned. Let's talk about the current situation. No matter what, we are not allowed to retreat. It is still too early to conclude that we should retreat. Whether the enemy has really sent their army to the south remains to be seen. Even if that is the case, attacking this hinterland will not be something that can be done in a short period of time. Report. Suddenly, an urgent voice could be heard from outside the door. A young man dressed in green, who was completely different from the other intelligence agents, flew in hurriedly with a ball of blue flame in his hand. Along the way, regardless of whether it was the guards or the other intelligence agents, all avoided him, their faces filled with shock. Inspector Bai Yun's eyebrows twitched fiercely. Blue Spirit Message, the highest level of emergency message? Nan Guang's heart sank. How could it be this kind of message? Intelligence was divided into 3 levels. They were divided into yellow, green, and blue according to their color. Blue was the highest level of intelligence. Yellow was important intelligence. Every action of the enemy was classified as 3rd-level intelligence. Green was important intelligence. For example, the intelligence that Nan Guang saw about the enemy's army heading south was something that only the Palace Master had the right to look at. Lastly, there was blue intelligence. This was the first time since the otherworldly realm had invaded the northern continent. Once it appeared, it would signify an unprecedented crisis. Therefore, Inspector Bai Yun and Palace Master Nan Guang's expressions were extremely ugly. The young man flew over with the flame in his hand, his face filled with fear. Palace Master Nan Guang grabbed the flame and infused her vital energy into her fingers. The flame was extinguished, but the sparks that flew in all directions formed an image in the air. In the image, blood flowed like a river, and flames soared into the sky. Under the illumination of the light, the ground was filled with corpses, as well as ferocious screams and cries from the fleeing crowd. Swish! The screen of light suddenly turned bright red. It was a young man who had not been able to escape in time. His neck had been cut off, and his blood was spurting everywhere, blocking the screen of light. Amidst the blurriness, they could see a bloody figure laughing ferociously as it stepped on the screen of light. With a cracking sound, the screen of light shattered. The bloody scene, which was like a scene from hell, caused everyone to shudder. Palace Master Nan Guang was startled, then said absent-mindedly, "That is the Feng Qing region. Deputy Palace Master Feng Qing died in battle." She recognized that the person who had been beheaded was Deputy Palace Master Feng Qing. How could the enemy be so fast? Inspector Bai Yun sucked in a breath of cold air. However, we still have time. The Feng Qing region is located at the edge of the region, so it will still take some time for them to reach its center. Report. Just at this time, another urgent and loud voice rushed over from the horizon. From afar, it was a young man in green clothes who was holding a blue flame in his hand. Lan Ling's message. Palace Master Nanguang's face was deathly pale. Very quickly, the blue flame appeared in her palm. As she extinguished the flame with her palm, another screen of light appeared. Blood, flames, corpses, and blood flowed like a river. Cries, shouts, and ferocious laughter could be heard. The Blood Demon region has been destroyed. Palace Master Nanguang felt as if her heart was being pierced by needles. Inspector Bai Yun sucked in a breath of cold air. How is this possible? The Blood Demon region is located on the other side. Could it be that the enemy is attacking from both sides? Report. Report. Two hurried shouts came from the sky. At this time, everyone's expression changed. This was because they could vaguely see several figures in the distance. In total, there were 8 of them. Burial Sword region destroyed. Shenkong region destroyed. Liuli region destroyed. Anyang region destroyed. In the end, Palace Master Nanguang held a blue flame in her hand. Her palm was trembling, as she had already lost the strength to hold it. Chapter 6:47. The enemies surrounded them from all directions at lightning speed, destroying the sub-palace in one fell swoop. They had already been surrounded. The news that they had received about the destruction of the Phoenix Cabinet was already outdated. Swoosh! A large number of people rushed toward the city center like a tide. They were the people of the 10 territories who had survived the massacre. They were like lambs being chased as they fled toward the center of the city. Its deputy palace master Hua Jilan. The guards at the gate immediately recognized the fleeing figure. It was Hua Jilan, one of the beauties of the northern continent's sub-palace. She was so beautiful that it was difficult to forget her. However, compared to her former beauty, Hua Jilan's face had lost its color. She had many injuries on her body, and her long hair was in a mess. She was leading the core members of the Jilan region as they fled. Behind them, a group of murderous armored men could be vaguely seen, and they chased after them with ferocious smiles. Anyone who was caught by them would be decapitated in a flash of blood, and a rain of blood would rise in the air. Endless screams rose and fell, coming from all directions. With the city center as the center, blood rained down from the sky, as well as broken limbs. The sky was dyed red, as if it was the end of the world. How can they be so fast? Inspector Bai Yun could not describe his feelings with words. Even if they had rushed without any obstacles, it would still have taken them a few days. How could they have arrived in such a short time? Seeing that the enemies were rushing toward him, Inspector Bai Yun's old face changed several times. He jumped into the air and waved his sleeves. 2 gusts of wind appeared under his feet and carried him away. Before he left, he turned around and shouted, "Palace Master Nanguang, listen to my command. You must defend the city to the end. You are not allowed to escape." Palace Master Nanguang was no longer in the mood to mock Inspector Bai Yun, who was running away. She looked at the sky full of blood and smiled bitterly. At that moment, a loud scream could be heard. It sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Looking toward the source of the sound, Inspector Bai Yun, who had clearly escaped to the edge of the sky, was pierced through by a blood-red spear that fell from the sky. Sensing the terrifying power of the blood-red spear, Palace Master Nanguang's expression changed, and she shouted, "Dodge!" The surrounding people did not dare to stay any longer. They scattered in all directions. Bang! Amidst the loud rumbling, the earth fiercely trembled, and more than half of the city lord's mansion collapsed. In the ruins, Inspector Bai Yun was nailed into a huge pit. He was vomiting blood, and groaning sounds came from his throat. His face was contorted in pain and looked extremely miserable. The blood cloud spear. This is Holy Master Shui Wu's magical treasure. Palace Master Nanguang stared at the blood-colored spear, her long eyelashes trembling. Hearing this, the faces of the people in the mansion turned as pale as paper. In their hearts, Shui Wu's name was equivalent to that of a demon. This was an extremely cruel and bloodthirsty sacred lord. The otherworldly beings led by the other sacred lords were more or less restrained on the continent. They didn't start a massacre and only trap the people that they had conquered. Only sacred Lord Shui Wu was different. Wherever the army he led passed, not even the fowls and dogs were spared, and millions of corpses were left. Because he needed a large amount of fresh blood to refine his magic weapon. The infamous blood cloud spear. The spear contained a bloodthirsty, ancient, ferocious spirit, which was extremely bloodthirsty. Only by devouring a large amount of blood essence could it display its spirituality and increase the power of the blood cloud spear. With the help of the ferocious spirit, sacred Lord Shui Wu's battle prowess was close to that of a level 4 fairy. Such an evil technique was a forbidden technique in the Jiuzhou continent, and only evil cultivators dared to use it stealthily. However, this was the Jinlong continent, which wasn't under Jiuzhou's supervision. Thus, he could kill people and take their blood. The number of Jinlong continent's living beings that had died at his hands was even greater than that of the other 4 sacred lords combined. This person's infamy in the Jinlong continent was enough to strike fear into people's hearts. In fact, he could even frighten children and stop them from crying. However, wasn't it rumored that this person was wreaking havoc in the West continent? Why would he suddenly appear in the Northern continent? At this moment, they couldn't think too much about it. "Everyone, gather here," Palace Master Nan Guang shouted. Her voice, which contained vital energy, spread throughout the entire city. They were all frightened, so they quickly gathered at the center of the city. As they were surrounded by enemies, they had nowhere else to run. Palace Master Nan Guang smiled bitterly. Even if they didn't want to fight, they had to fight until the end. Swoosh! Swoosh! The crowd quickly gathered around them. Tens of thousands of people surrounded the Palace Master's manor, forming a huge human wall. At this moment, the pursuers from all directions also gradually stopped. When they looked over, a despairing scene appeared before them. There were only 200 people floating in the sky, and they were very sparsely spread out. Their numbers were relatively few. However, every single one of them had the power of a half-fairy. More than 70% of them were 1 crystal half-fairies, 20% were 2 crystals half-fairies, and the remaining 10% were 3 crystals half-fairies. Such a huge lineup was more than enough to wipe out any faction in the continent. As for Palace Master Nan Guang and the others, apart from her, who had managed to break through to the 1 crystal half-fairy realm a year ago due to the great change in the world's vital energy, there weren't any half-fairies present. Most of the 30,000 people were ordinary residents of the city, and their cultivations were negligible. As for those who had managed to escape from the other cities, they were mostly defeated soldiers. The 200 of them were more than enough to kill 30,000 of them. How could anyone resist such a despairing situation? Swoosh! The blood cloud spear, which was in the deep pit, suddenly moved. It was pulled out of Inspector by Yun's body, and it rushed into the clouds. A blood-red palm stretched out of the hazy clouds and grabbed the blood cloud spear. A trifling 2 crystals half-fairy. How boring. The owner of the blood cloud spear stepped out of the clouds. It was a youth in blood-red armor. There was a flying dragon between his eyebrows, which shone with a strange radiance. It was the Saint Master, the Flying Dragon's Saint Master. "It's really Shui Wu." Palace Master Nan Guang and the others couldn't help but mutter. The youth had an ugly appearance, and because he had spent a lot of time with evil spirits, his face had festered and was covered with pimples, which contained purple poison. As such, his entire face was purple, making him seem like a toad. His yellow eyes emitted a ferocious, beast-like aura. It wasn't a human's aura, and it was extremely ferocious. He stuck out his tongue and licked the blood cloud spear, then shook his head and said, "I'm getting old, and my body is weak. I don't even have a decent 2 crystals half-fairy." As he spoke, Shui Wu looked down at them like a hungry wolf looking at a flock of sheep. He was unscrupulously choosing his next prey. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Palace Master Nan Guang, and he grinned. "Hee hee, a 1 crystal half-fairies woman. A woman's blood is much more delicious than the blood of an old man. Come up here. How arrogant was he? He ordered Palace Master Nan Guang to take the initiative and let him drink her blood. However, he still had such a terrifying power. He alone was enough to suppress 30,000 people. Palace Master Nan Guang's heart trembled, and when she heard his order, she felt extremely sad. Had she fallen to the point of being treated as food by others? Not only would she die in battle, but she would also end up as nourishment for the weapons. While she was feeling sad, anger welled up in her heart. If you fight, you will die. If you don't fight, you will also die. Do you even have a choice? Palace Master Nan Guang shouted sorrowfully. Who didn't know about Shui Wu's evil reputation? His subordinates never let anyone live. They had no choice but to die. Let's fight. Death might be a better outcome. Hua Zhilan smiled bitterly. If she hadn't escaped quickly enough, she would have already been killed by a group of hungry, otherworldly people. Her fate would have been even worse than death. Even though they still hoped that they would survive, they still had to prepare for the upcoming battle. Palace Master Nan Guang persuaded the crowd and smiled. All right, let's fight to the death. 3 Ultimate Formation, activate. Palace Master Nan Guang took out a blue ball from her bosom and threw into the air. The blue ball floated above the Palace Master's mansion and emitted a gentle blue radiance. It was like a wave that slowly enveloped the Palace Master's mansion. There were 3 layers of this wave, and the deeper it went, the deeper it became. Pour all of your energy into the light screen. Regardless of whether it's your vital energy or spiritual energy, it will all depend on Heaven's will as to how long it can last. Palace Master Nan Guang's voice echoed throughout the area. The 3 Ultimate Formation was a formation that all 4 sub-palaces possessed, and it was similar to the otherworldly joint attack technique. However, the power of the joint attack was far inferior, as most of the energy within the formation would be consumed by each other. The combined power of 30,000 people could only display less than 10% of its power. Upon hearing this, the 30,000 people followed Palace Master Nan Guang's instructions and poured all of their spiritual energy or vital energy into the light screen. The outermost layer of the blue wave suddenly shone brightly. Ripples appeared on the surface of the water, and from the ripples, sharp energy arrows were formed. There were more than 10,000 of them, and they shot out densely from the water. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, the sky was filled with blue arrows. They were imposing and majestic, covering all directions. Ah! A scream was heard as an enemy half-fairy realm expert was hit and fell from the sky. However, most of them had been prepared for this, and the blue arrows were like raindrops when they hit their vital energy shields. They weren't much of a threat. When the arrows became sparse, only 2 or 3 of the 200 people were injured or killed. Palace Master Nan Guang's heart sank. Even with everyone's combined power, they could only cause 200 or 300 casualties. Continue. Don't stop. Palace Master Nan Guang shouted. At this critical moment, no one dared to slack off. Buzz, with a slight tremble, the second wave also reacted, and a giant whirlpool appeared. Within the whirlpool, a 30-meter-long arrow emitted an astonishing spiritual pressure. The expressions of the surrounding enemies changed slightly, and they all retreated. Swoosh! The giant blue arrow flew out, streaked across the sky, and shot toward the east. Puff! With a series of explosions, 6 crystals half-fairy realm experts screamed miserably and turned into a rain of blood. The crowd became excited. The second move of the 3 extinction formation was already so powerful. Then what about the last move? Everyone, don't hold back anymore. Activate the formation with all of your power. Palace Master Nan Guang's heart was filled with hope. Everyone worked together, and with their combined power, the 3rd layer of water started to tremble. What was different was that even though the 3rd layer of water was trembling intensely, no illusions of energy appeared. However, their intuition told them that there was a transparent and terrifying arrow shooting out of the 3rd layer of water. Swoosh! The sound of the arrow tearing through the air echoed, and a long flame appeared in the air. The expressions of the two crystals' half-fairy realm experts, who were several miles away, slightly changed. They felt as if they were about to be annihilated. Quickly retreat. The two crystals' half-fairy realm experts' expressions became grave, and they were no longer as relaxed as before. As they looked at the flame that was coming at them, they were finally afraid. Slap! However, at this moment, a blood-red light streaked across the sky, and the flame was turned into ashes. The terrifying pressure immediately dissipated, and the blood-red light revealed its true form. The bloody light revealed its true form. It was the blood cloud spear. I've killed enough. It's this sacred lord's turn. A voice so cold that it made one's teeth go cold rang out. Shui Wu wore a cruel smile, and his eyes were filled with mockery. He waved his hand, and the blood cloud spear turned into an afterimage. In an instant, the first layer of the three extinction formations water wave was shattered. I broke through one layer in one breath. Guess how long it will take to break through the second layer? Shui Wu was like a cat playing with a mouse. Slap! As he snapped his fingers, the blood cloud spear turned into an afterimage once again. Pop! Ripples appeared on the surface of the second layer of water wave, and after a short moment, it suddenly shattered. I broke through the second layer in 2 breaths. Guess how long it will take to break through the third layer? Palace Master Nanguang's heart was filled with sorrow. The disparity between them was too great, and even if they had the power of 30,000 people, they still wouldn't be a match for Shui Wu. As they looked at Shui Wu's mocking expression, all of them despaired, and they all gave up on infusing their energy into the formation. They were all filled with grief and indignation as they waited for the formation to be broken and their deaths. Shui Wu grinned malevolently, then snapped his fingers once again. However, at this moment, a loud voice came from the horizon, and it shook the entire space. It seemed as if it was coming at them with great momentum. Why don't you guess how many of you will be left after this attack? When they looked at the sky, they saw that it was filled with dark clouds, and they could see that a 300-meter-wide ring was floating in front of them. Chapter 648. Energy Condensing Ring. Shui Wu's expression changed when he saw it. Get out of the way. He was extremely shocked. Where did the Jinlong army come from? How did the otherworldly energy condensing ring fall into the hands of the Jinlong continent? How did they know how to operate it? Although he reacted quickly, the sudden appearance of this army had caught them off guard. It was just like how they had suddenly attacked the northern continent's empires. Rumble. The light beam that was formed by 10,000 people contained a terrifying power that caused the sky to turn white. The expressions of the otherworldly half-celestials were just as pale. The light beam pierced through the sky, creating sparks and lightning. It was a spectacular sight. The sky above the Palace Master's mansion became extremely dazzling. Even the sun in the sky was covered by the dazzling light, making it impossible for anyone to look at it directly. As the sky shook, the light beam swept through the sky above the Palace Master's mansion. The people in the mansion seemed to be in a turbulent time and space. Their bodies shook violently, and the space around them collapsed. The aura of fire and lightning wreaked havoc, and destructive power spread everywhere. It seemed as if they would be sucked into the abyss of destruction at any moment. When the rumbling sound gradually weakened, the lightning and flames gradually disappeared, and the dazzling world gradually returned to normal. The sky was clear, and the world was clear. The area around the Palace Master's mansion had been swept clean, and the otherworldly army that had surrounded it seemed as if they had evaporated. Out of the hundreds of otherworldly soldiers that had surrounded it, only 20 or 30 of them were left. They were trembling in the air, and they looked to be in a sorry state. As for the others, they had disappeared without a trace. Combine. Attack. Technique. Palace Master Nanguang's beautiful eyes narrowed, and her heart felt numb. Out of everyone present, she was the only one who could see everything clearly in the dazzling world. As the light beam swept through the area, the otherworldly army, which was so strong that it made people despair, was reduced to nothingness. None of them managed to escape, as they had all been reduced to dust. A single attack had destroyed all the otherworldly experts. The 30,000 people in the palace master's mansion were all dead silent. They couldn't even breathe as they stared at the black cloud that was slowly approaching them from the horizon. "Who is it?" A loud roar could be heard. In front of the remaining 20 or 30 otherworldly half-celestials was Shui Wu, who was holding the blood cloud spear. The surface of the blood cloud spear trembled slightly, and its blood-red radiance became dimmer. Shui Wu's hair was disheveled, and a brutal look appeared in his inhuman eyes. It was only because of him that he managed to protect the 23 crystals half-fairy realm experts at the last moment. Otherwise, all of them would have been killed by the peerless light beam. Rumble. Black clouds surged like a magnificent army, shaking the heavens and the earth. The murderous aura and awe-inspiring battle intent were like a storm in the silence, making people feel oppressed and uneasy. A ripple appeared in Shui Wu's tyrannical eyes, and his face was filled with shock. The expressions of the 23 crystals half-fairies behind him were also deeply moved. "The Jinlong continent has such a great army? I've never seen that will before." Palace Master Nanguang was also bewildered. She could feel a powerful will coming from the black clouds. It was a will that made her blood boil. It was as if they were facing death calmly, and they didn't hesitate to fight to the death. It was an iron-like will that gave her a pressure that came from deep within her soul. Our human race has such a divine weapon. Who are they? Regardless of whether it was the Jinlong continent's people or the otherworldly people, all of them had the same question in their minds. Ever since the otherworldly army had invaded the Jinlong continent, even though they had resisted, there had never been such an iron-blooded army that could oppress people with just their will alone. Heavens! Doubt! Alliance! What responded to him was a clear and powerful voice, as if it was announcing their identity. It was the Heavenly Law Alliance. The Heavenly Law Alliance? Even if Palace Master Nanguang racked her brains, she still wouldn't be able to link this iron-blooded army to the Heavenly Law Alliance. Even though the Heavenly Law Alliance was powerful, it definitely wouldn't be so courageous. The Heavenly Law Alliance? Those cowards? Shui Wu fixed his gaze on them, while shock flickered in his eyes. If he remembered correctly, the 8th Saint Master was in charge of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Now that they had appeared here and possessed the energy condensing ring, it seemed like the 8th Saint Master and the others had failed. As the black clouds pressed down, they gradually became clearer. 10,000 people stood close to each other. Their eyes were filled with sharp and powerful killing intents, which were burning with raging flames. The will of 10,000 people gathered together, forming a powerful pressure that shook the surroundings. There were 5 or 6 elders of the half-fairy realm standing in front of them. However, there was also a silver-haired youth in front of them. Behind the silver-haired youth were 16 youths at the half-fairy realm, who were protecting him. The leader of the guards was a grade 2 half-fairy, who was following him by half a step, as if he was a servant. The army of 10,000 people was like a star surrounding the moon, and they were all surrounding him. Such a strange combination was extremely puzzling. Moreover, there was still the mysterious fairy realm expert, not to mention the fact that the 6 elders were the Heavenly Law Alliance's elders. Thus, they couldn't allow a youth who had yet to reach adulthood to lead them. However, such an unprecedented event had just occurred in front of them. "Who is he?" everyone asked at the same time. Palace Master Nanguang was startled. When she heard that it was the Heavenly Law Alliance, she thought that it would be Elder Jiu, who was famous throughout the Jinlong continent, leading an army. However, she had never expected that it would be this silver-haired youth. "Inyu!" Suddenly, an anxious, surprised, and shocked voice sounded out beside her. It was Hua Jilan. She covered her lips with her jade-like hands, while her eyes were filled with emotions. "It's him!" Palace Master Nanguang gasped. Hadn't he disappeared long ago? Why was he now leading the Heavenly Law Alliance? He even suspected that Hua Jilan might have mistaken him for someone else. The youth who was wanted by the Empire of Darkness in the past had now become a ruler of a region. The disparity in status before and after was so great that it made people dumbfounded. "Deputy Palace Master Inu?" A familiar voice came from the crowd. When Suyu looked in the direction of the voice, he saw that it was a group of martial artists who were in a sorry state. However, Suyu recognized them, as they were the Inu Manners Guards. Although he couldn't call out their names, he could recognize their faces. Did the Inu area not escape this calamity? Suyu's eyes shone with a cold light. Wu Hen, were you captured by them? Shui Wu's pupils contracted as he discovered that his former comrade, Saint Master Wu Hen, was standing leisurely behind the youth. Wu Hen shrugged his shoulders and sighed helplessly. It's as you can see. Shui Wu shuddered slightly, as he was able to subdue a Grade 2 Fairy Realm expert and make him submit to him. It was obvious that the silver-haired youth wasn't as simple as he seemed. Although Shui Wu was cautious, he wasn't afraid. In terms of cultivation, even 3 Wu Hens combined couldn't compare to him. Moreover, he had another killing move. Who are you? Shui Wu's gaze was fixed on Suyu. He didn't care about the 10,000 people behind him. Chapter 649. In his opinion, apart from the 5th Saint Master, anyone else who faced this demonic youth who could fight against a Divine Master's clone would be like a moth flying into a flame. Traceless, you've fallen. It's not a big deal to be captured, but even Lien Xin is willing to be lowly. Shui Wu snorted disdainfully. The Jinlong continent is such a barbaric place. They're just a bunch of uncivilized barbarians, yet you are actually speaking up for them. After I kill him, I will definitely report to the 5th Saint Master. The corners of Traceless' lips twitched, but in the end, she sighed and said nothing more. He was extremely benevolent. Lad, let me see what kind of ability you have. Shui Wu held the blood cloud spear in his hand, while his eyes revealed a murderous look. Alliance leader, let us do it. Let's gather everyone's strength and eliminate this demon. The 16 Annihilation Squad shouted in unison. Many of them had been killed by Saint Lord Shui Wu. How could they remain calm when they encountered him in the northern continent? All of you leave. Suyu waved his sleeves, and the clamor came to an abrupt end, as if it had been cut off by a knife. Then, silence returned. Palace Master Nanguang couldn't believe that he was so obedient. How long had it been since he became the Alliance Master? How could he have such terrifying prestige? Shui Wu licked his lips, and his eyes shone brightly. He then said, It's no wonder that a group of cowardly good-for-nothings would suddenly gather together. It seems like you've become their spiritual pillar. That's good too. If I suck their blood dry in front of them, they will collapse on their own. Eat my spear, Shui Wu said casually. He flicked his finger, and the blood cloud spear turned into a blur. When he appeared again, he appeared above Suyu's head as if he had teleported. They were less than a breath away from each other, leaving no room to think. Alliance Master, be careful. Everyone reacted in shock. Shui Wu was much more powerful than he had imagined. Puchi, Suyu had no time to react, and his body was pierced by the blood cloud spear. However, his body exploded and turned into streaks of lightning that floated on the spot. Chila, not far away, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky. A figure wrapped in lightning appeared. It was Suyu, who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. His body was completely unharmed, and his expression was as calm as usual. Lightning evasion? Shui Wu was slightly startled. What a profound evasion technique. Such an escape technique could only be used by almighty divine masters. Yet Suyu, who was merely a half-fairy, was able to easily master it. Your reaction isn't too bad. However, aren't you being too careless? Shui Wu sneered and waved his index finger in the air. The blood cloud spear melted in the air, turning into a puddle of bloody water that emitted a foul stench. It splashed and formed a curtain of rain that shot towards Suyu. Suyu had just finished using the lightning escape, so it would be difficult for him to teleport again. Shui Wu had taken advantage of this flaw to launch a hidden attack. It could be seen how rich his experience was on the battlefield. The blood rain had not even come close to Suyu, but the crowd had already sensed the danger Suyu was in. From the blood rain, everyone could sense a deep evil intent. It was as if the blood had a spirit of its own and was extremely evil. Everyone knew that if they were touched by the blood, something bad would definitely happen. Hua Jilan's beautiful face turned pale, and she quickly shouted, Inu, Be careful. If you touch that drop of blood, it will invade your body and instantly devour your blood. She had personally witnessed this move in the Jilin region, which had been attacked. In an instant, more than 1,000 people had been killed. You are full of flaws. That's all you've got. Shuewu shook his head calmly. Success was already in sight. Clang! All of a sudden, a ball of azure light appeared in front of Su Yu. It revolved around Su Yu and flickered rapidly. The impenetrable blood rain was unexpectedly deflected, and not a single drop of it was able to approach Su Yu. Shui Wu's expression became grave, and he waved his hand to retrieve the blood rain. The drop of blood then condensed in his palm and turned into a blood cloud spear. As for Su Yu, he just stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. A ball of azure light, which was on his chest, gradually stabilized. If one observed it carefully, they would discover that it was an azure ruler, which emitted a shocking spiritual pressure. A middle-grade spiritual artifact. Shui Wu was startled. He was quite surprised by this, but greed soon appeared in his eyes. Fine, I want this spiritual artifact. Blood Cloud Tornado. Shui Wu laughed crazily as he waved the blood cloud spear. A large amount of blood-colored mist flew out of the spear and quickly formed a 100-meter-thick blood-colored tornado. The wind was filled with a foul stench, and anyone who smelled it would feel nauseous. Everyone moved back. The blood mist is poisonous, and if anyone's cultivation is below the half-fairy realm, their spirit crystals will be contaminated and their cultivation will be crippled. If it's serious, they will even rot on the spot. Wu Hen waved his hand and dispersed the remaining blood mist. He then gestured for everyone to move back. At this moment, the tornado had already engulfed Su Yu. Your flesh and blood will become the blood cloud spear's nourishment. The blood-colored tornado was everywhere, and it was impossible to defend against it with just the ruler alone. However, Su Yu still didn't move, and he just let the tornado attack him. However, when the azure light disappeared, a black armor appeared on his body. A crystal on the armor's chest was turned into ashes, and its vital energy was instantly sucked dry. At this moment, a ripple-like light screen appeared from the armor and enveloped Su Yu's body. The powerful tornado was unexpectedly unable to penetrate the light screen in the slightest. How is this possible? Shui Wu was truly shocked. His blood cloud tornado was something that no one at the same level as him dared to look down upon. However, Su Yu had unexpectedly managed to block it so easily. After the stalemate lasted for a moment, the blood cloud tornado dissipated by itself. Shui Wu's expression became grave as he realized that Su Yu had only blocked it. He hadn't attacked at all. As expected, Su Yu's hands, which were clasped behind his back, were slowly lowered at this moment. His black armor was slowly withdrawn, and his calm eyes were filled with coldness. Since you've attacked enough, it's my turn now. Shui Wu's expression became grave as he said, Humph, it's not over yet, so don't get complacent just yet. Blood cloud destruction. Shui Wu held the long spear in his hand, while his whole body was engulfed by a scarlet blood mist. He had reached the realm of being one with the spear, and it seemed like he was an indestructible long spear. Sizzle. His figure disappeared, but a long crack appeared in the space. The mysterious heavenly divine pavilion was a fairy artifact, and its space's power was limited. Hence, it could be easily destroyed by someone. However, the Jinlong continent was a true world, and it was unexpectedly able to create many cracks in its space. Such a strike was truly terrifying. Wu Hen's heart thumped slightly. He clearly remembered that the fifth Saint Master had once commented that no one below the grade 4 fairy realm could rival such a strike. Such a strike was almost at the pinnacle of the grade 3 fairy realm. In Wu Hen's eyes, Su Yu's previous 3 layers of defense were still extremely dangerous. However, he was astonished to discover that Su Yu didn't seem to have any intention of defending himself. Instead, he took a step forward and spoke calmly. Your strongest strike? It's only SOSO. Chapter 650. The meridians in Su Yu's arms had a strange golden color and were emitting a dazzling luster. An inhuman power was surging within his meridians. At that moment, Everyone had the misconception that Su Yu was no longer human, but some kind of terrifying creature. Slap! The majestic blood cloud spear's afterimage came to an abrupt stop as it was firmly grasped in Su Yu's hand. Shui Wu's face stiffened, and the muscles on his face trembled. He was extremely frightened. What kind of body is this? A two-crystal half-fairy's body could withstand an attack that even a grade 3 fairy would not dare to face. The first dragon's body was indeed powerful. Su Yu wondered what the evil dragon divine body would be like once it was cultivated to its final stage. As Su Yu thought about this, he looked at the blood cloud spear and furrowed his brows. Although the spear had been grasped, it was as if it had a life of its own. It was twisting like a snake, wrapping itself around Su Yu's arm in an attempt to break free. Su Yu recalled that the spear could turn into a rain of blood at any moment. Rather than calling it a spear, it would be more accurate to call it an evil creature that had taken the form of a spear. Humph! Su Yu snorted softly as his golden meridians surged and erupted with a powerful force. With a muffled sound, the blood cloud spear was crushed and turned into a rain of blood. At the same time, Su Yu waved his right hand, and the Red Lotus' incredible umbrella appeared in his palm. He opened a small gap, and a red fire dragon with extremely high temperature came out of the umbrella. It flew forward and burned a rain of blood. Amidst the raging flames, one could faintly hear the ear-piercing scream of a creature. My blood cloud spear. Shui Wu's eyes widened in anger. How much effort had he put into cultivating the blood cloud spear? And now, it had been destroyed by Su Yu. Shui Wu stared at Su Yu fiercely, his eyes filled with determination. Fine, you forced me to do this. He clenched his teeth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. As he weaved signs with his hands, the blood essence turned into a mysterious symbol and entered the raging flames. The raging flames suddenly fluctuated, and at the same time, the scream came to an abrupt stop. Sizzle! A vortex appeared within the raging flames, and all of the flames were quickly sucked into it. The sudden scene caused the people of the True Dragon sect, who hadn't even had the time to rejoice, to be startled. They could feel an evil aura rapidly brewing within the flames. It was as if a powerful creature had been born from the flames. Come out, Pearl Scale's blood centipede. Hoochie, the fiery red lotus flames that filled the sky were all sucked into a whirlpool. As the flames dissipated, a 10-meter-long centipede appeared in front of them. Its body was 100 feet long, and its entire body was blood red. It had hundreds of long legs, and its abdomen was densely covered with eyes of different sizes. It stood up like a human, opened its mouth, and sucked in crazily, swallowing all the raging flames in the sky. The Red Lotus Angry Flame was a flame that even early-stage fairies were afraid of, yet this centipede was able to swallow it whole. Black Scale Blood Centipede? Ancient Spiritual Bug? Wuhan's pupils constricted as he sucked in a breath of cold air. The ferocious spirit you're rearing in your blood cloud spear is actually an ancient spiritual insect. His face was filled with shock, fear, and unease. Ancient spiritual bug? Even Su Yu was slightly startled, as he knew that many ancient spiritual insects possessed extraordinary magical powers, especially the ones on the ancient spiritual insect list, which possessed unimaginable powers. Humph! Originally, after nourishing it with human blood essence for a period of time, it would have been able to reconstruct its body and recover to its peak state. But now, its remnant soul had to be awakened in advance. You should be prepared to die. Shui Wu was filled with hatred, and as he glared at Su Yu, his killing intent soared to the sky. He had discovered a pearl scales blood centipede, which had been frozen for countless years by accident in a place that had been frozen for a long time. Then, he had used all of his efforts to save it, which had been on the verge of death. However, it had been frozen for a long time, and its body and soul had suffered great damage. Hence, it needed a large amount of blood essence from powerful living beings. In the Jiuzhou continent, such an evil technique would have been exterminated, but in the Jinlong continent, it wasn't regulated, so it was an unprecedented opportunity. More than 1 million Jinlong continent martial artists had died by the blood cloud spear. Although their cultivation levels weren't high and their blood essence wasn't perfect, they still had a great number of them. As such, the Pearl Scales blood centipede recovered at an unprecedented speed, and it had already recovered 30% of its power. However, just when it was about to completely revive the Pearl Scales blood centipede, it had run into a rare and powerful enemy like Suyu. Suyu had destroyed the blood cloud spear with just one hand, and the Pearl Scales blood centipede, which was hidden within it, had been severely injured. In order to prevent it from being burned alive, the only way was to release it in advance. Once that happened, all of his efforts would have been in vain, as the Pearl Scales blood centipede would wither and return to its weak state after a period of time. Wu Hen's face turned slightly pale. "Master, be careful. This spiritual bug is not to be underestimated. It's a backup spiritual bug on the Archean spiritual pet list. It's not much weaker than the real spiritual bugs on the Archean spiritual pet list." The Jinlong continent martial artist was confused when he heard this, but Suyu knew how powerful it was, so he immediately became vigilant. Roar! The Pearl Scales blood centipede's abdomen had hundreds of thousands of eyes, and they all turned to look at Suyu at the same time. Each pair of blood-red eyes revealed a cruel, murderous look, as well as a look of rage. It was obvious that the Pearl Scales blood centipede knew that Suyu was the culprit who had forced it out. As the Pearl Scales blood centipede let out a roar, its hundreds of blood-red eyes shot out red rays of light at the same time, covering Suyu. Suyu's expression changed slightly. The Eternal Stone King armor appeared, and he quickly inserted a crystal into it to unleash the Eternal Stone King armor's greatest power. Puff! However, the sturdy light screen was torn apart like a piece of paper. If one observed it carefully, they would discover that the light screen hadn't been torn apart by any power. Instead, it had been corroded. The light screen was instantly penetrated, and hundreds of red light beams engulfed Suyu's body. Bang! Bang! Suyu felt as if he had been struck by a mountain, and his blood started churning as he was sent flying away. Suyu didn't have the time to care about his injuries, and while he was overwhelmed with shock, the veins in his body turned golden. He shouted in a low voice and gathered all of his strength in his legs. He then exerted his strength and managed to slow himself down. However, because of this, he was sent flying thousands of feet away, leaving a deep dent on the ground. It was a shocking sight. Suyu, who had the first dragon body, had been sent flying away. The Jinlong continent martial artist's heart sank. "Sir, let me help you." Wu Hin clenched his teeth and rushed over. He had been blindly confident in Suyu, and now that he had rushed over to help him, it was obvious how much he feared the Pearl Scales blood centipede. "Master, don't forget us." Luo Xiong and Li Cheng were unwilling to admit defeat, so they led the Annihilation team and rushed over to stand beside Suyu. "Alliance Master, don't forget us." The Heavenly Law Alliance's people didn't want Suyu to fight alone, so they all rushed over. Xuewu laughed. "Why are you in such a hurry? None of you can escape, so you should all stay here and become the Pearl Scales blood centipede's nourishment. Secret guards, listen up. Kill all of the Jinlong rebel army. Don't leave even a single one alive." As Xuewu gave his order, the remaining 23 half-fairies quickly surrounded him. A grade 3 half-fairy, along with 23 half-fairies. Their combined power was enough to defeat all of us. Suyu's expression became gloomy, as he knew that the situation was far from good. Wu Hin, lead the Annihilation team and unite the Heavenly Law Alliance's people. I will leave Xuewu and the others to you, while I will deal with the Pearl Scales blood centipede. Suyu's eyes shone with a sharp light, but if he left Xuewu and the others alone, they would surely suffer great casualties. Wu Hin hesitated for a moment, then shouted, "Follow me!" Luo Xiong and Li Cheng also hesitated for a moment, but they still clenched their teeth and followed him. Even though they had a large number of people, they still didn't have the slightest confidence in winning against the enemies, who had less than 25 people. This was especially the case for the grade 3 fairy, Xuewu. "Do you still remember the promise you made?" Wu Hin turned his head around and looked at the crowd. He could see from their eyes that they were cowering. They were cowering in the face of an invincible enemy like Shui Wu. What are you fighting for? For yourselves, your loved ones, your women, and all of the people you love? Su Yu's words were repeated by Wu Hin's mouth, which reignited their fighting spirit. After all, they had followed him to the northern continent to fight for the sake of their loved ones who had died and their loved ones who had passed away forever. But now that they were facing a great enemy, how could they cower? You are the hope of the human continent, as well as the hope of all of the dead. So, tell me, what are you going to do? Are you going to live as cowards, or are you going to shed your blood for them? Are you going to defend their dead souls? His loud and powerful shout had stirred up their blood. Fight! 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 Yes, fight! They could only fight. They would fight with their hot-bloodedness and their lives. Fine, let's kill them. Use our blood to exchange for the future of the Zhenlong continent. Wu Hin shouted loudly as he pounced toward Shui Wu. Kill them, the crowd shouted angrily. Their imposing auras seemed to be able to topple the mountains and overturn the seas. Under that kind of horrifying aura, the 23 half-immortals who revealed killing intent on their faces actually inexplicably trembled, although any one of them could casually exterminate a large group of them. When facing so many people who were not afraid of death at the same time, they actually felt panic as if they were facing a dreadful flood or ferocious beast. Shui Wu revealed his killing intent. You are just a group of ants. So, what if you shout until your throats are hoarse? Your fates have already been decided. Black Shadow Guards, kill them all. As he spoke, he punched through the air, and a huge fist made of true energy rushed into the crowd. Puff! Puff! Dozens of people's bodies exploded, and they all died. Trash! Shui Wu sneered disdainfully as he thrust his fist forward once again. Swoosh! A silhouette swept over and blocked the fist. It was Wu Hin. He shouted, Your opponent is me. Chapter 651. Shui Wu laughed disdainfully. You and I have fought at least 10 times, but the number of times you managed to exchange more than 10 blows with me can be counted on one hand. Now, you are already defeated, yet you are still so loyal to your master. I don't know whether it's because that lad's magical ability to control you is too powerful, or because you have truly submitted to him. Wu Hin laughed bitterly in his heart. How could I possibly submit to him? Who would willingly submit to someone else? After all, the seal set by Su Yu contained extremely great power. Even though he had a way to isolate it for a short period of time, what could he do about it? Once the time passed, Su Yu could activate the seal with just a thought and turn Wu Hin's soul into ashes. Don't waste your breath. If you want to kill them, you'll have to step over my dead body. Wu Hin took a deep breath and started weaving hand signs. A small white crane's image appeared above his head. Its white feathers were falling unceasingly, making it look hazy and beautiful. Shui Wu's eyes flickered with a cold glint as he tapped the air with the tip of his right foot. A muffled sound echoed out as the air under Shui Wu's foot exploded, sending him flying away. Come at me. Silent featherfall. Wu Hin's voice was faintly discernible, and it sounded like a lonely swan on the horizon. The fluttering white feathers above his head immediately formed a giant white net. Swoosh! At the same time that the giant net was formed, it suddenly swayed, as if it had suffered an attack. In the empty net, a figure in blood-red armor appeared out of thin air and was intercepted. Silent featherfall. Did you manage to cultivate this legendary cultivation technique's remnant volume to the lower tier of the first stage? You really hit it well. Shui Wu was slightly startled when he was intercepted. The last time they had fought was only a few months ago, and at that time, Wu Hin hadn't shown that he had managed to break through to the lower tier of the cultivation technique. Wu Hin revealed a faint smile. If I didn't do this, how would I have the guts to challenge the 7th Saint Master? With a confident smile on his face, Wu Hin weaved a seal with his hands, and the giant net he had woven closed in one breath. Countless white feathers stuck to Shui Wu's body and connected with each other to form a chain that bound him. It's too early for you to celebrate. After Xue Wu recovered from his shock, he coldly laughed. Wu Hen's heart thumped. Open, Xue Wu shouted in a low voice, and all the pores on his skin opened up. Layers of stinky, blood-red qi seeped out from his body through his pores and adhered to the white feather. Suddenly, the white feather emitted a sizzling sound. Then it turned into black feathers and turned into ashes. In the blink of an eye, the white feather chains were all turned into ashes. Blood poison? Wu Hen's expression became grave. Your blood poison is more than twice as dense as before. I'm afraid that even a level 4 fairy wouldn't be a match for you. The so-called blood poison was a method of condensing poison into one's bloodline and nourishing it. This kind of blood poison was usually extremely toxic, and it was very difficult to find an antidote. Once one was injured by the blood poison, it was basically equivalent to death in battle. This move was Xue Wu's famous consummate skill. However, after he obtained the Blood Cloud Spear, he rarely used it in actual combat. Now, it seemed that he had not slacked off in his cultivation of the blood poison. Instead, he had made great progress. Xue Wu chuckled. You're not the only one who is hiding his cultivation level. Watch my palm. After breaking free of the white feather cage, Xue Wu quickly attacked him. Wu Hen couldn't block it, so he could only condense a large number of white feathers on his palm. His palms collided with Xue Wu's powerful attack. Thud, thud, thud. The disparity between their abilities was immediately apparent. Wu Hen groaned softly and retreated several steps, while a mouthful of blood flowed out of his mouth. Hiss! Suddenly, Wu Hen hissed in pain. When he looked at his palm, he saw that the white feathers on his palm had already turned into pitch-black dust, which was slowly drifting away. At the same time, a black spot, which was about the size of a fingernail, appeared on his palm, which had also turned black. Moreover, it was starting to spread all over his palm. The blood poison has already entered your body. Even if I don't attack you, you won't be able to live for more than an hour. If you don't want to die immediately, you should just stand aside obediently. Otherwise, the faster you circulate your vital energy, the faster the poison will invade your limbs and bones. Xue Wu retracted his palm and looked coldly at the Heavenly Law Alliance's members, who were fighting against the 23 Black Shadow Guards. It's your turn, ants. Xue Wu chuckled and shook his sleeves. He then turned into a blur and flew over. At this moment, Old Chun, Luo Xiong, and the others were leading the Heavenly Law Alliance's encirclement against the 23 Black Shadow Guards. The main force was Old Chun, a few elders, and the 16 Annihilation Team. The 10,000 people surrounding them were supporting them, and they attacked them whenever they could. Although their attacks weren't effective, they were still able to affect the Black Shadow Guards. As such, the pressure on Old Chun, Luo Xiong, and the others was greatly reduced, and they now had the upper hand. At this moment, a Black Shadow Guard, who was already heavily injured, had his chest pierced through by Old Chun and Luo Xiong's joint attack, and he died on the spot. However, before he died, he threw a charm into the crowd, which immediately killed 8 of the Heavenly Law Alliance's geniuses, while another Annihilation Team member was injured. Huff! Old Chun and Luo Xiong were gasping for breath, while beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads. After such an intense battle, they had consumed more than a third of their vital energy and spiritual energy, and they had only managed to kill an injured Black Shadow Guard. Moreover, they had paid the price of 8 deaths and 1 injury. The otherworldly martial artists of the same cultivation level are indeed difficult to deal with. Regardless of whether it is in terms of cultivation techniques, magical treasures, or battle experience, they are far superior to the martial artists of the Jinlong continent. Old Chen's heart sank. 10,000 of them were fighting against 23 people, yet they were in a deadlock. Fortunately, no matter how well-trained the Black Shadow Guards were, they were at the end of their tether. Previously, they had been severely injured by their joint attack. Now, as the battle dragged on, they had consumed more of their energy, and their defense was starting to show flaws. Everyone continue. Kill all the otherworldly invaders. Old Chun was the first to roar. His old beard and tattered robe fluttered in the air, and his frail body gave the people, who had been fighting to their deaths, a boost in morale. Kill! Countless angry roars could be heard, which could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. Countless attacks of all kinds, coordinated with Old Chun and the others, bombarded the bodies of the Black Shadow Guards, who were surrounded. Facing the enemy's rising morale, the evil blood-black Shadow Guards, who were known for their ferocity, could not help but retreat. Swoosh! However, at this moment, a blood-red figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the two sides. Xuewu clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Old Chun and the others in disdain. His lips curled into a cold smile as he said, "No matter how arrogant ants are, they are still ants. Power is the sword that decides one's fate. I have already decided your fate, and your struggles will be futile. Destroy." Xuewu flipped his wrist, and a layer of foul-smelling blood-red light gathered on his palm. It emitted a dangerous aura. As he waved his palm, a strange, illusory blood-red palm print engulfed thousands of people. Old Chin's heart thumped wildly, and he was overwhelmed with shock. "All of you quickly retreat." At this moment, a figure that was chasing after them let out a loud shout. At the same time, a large number of white feathers flew over and formed a giant white net in front of the people of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Xuewu turned his head around, and his gaze became ice-cold. "You are recklessly using your vital energy. You are courting death." It was Wu Hen. His face had turned purple, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the poison in his body had reached an extremely dangerous level. "Wu Hen!" Old Chun was startled. He hadn't expected that Wu Hen would be defeated so quickly. Moreover, he was even more startled that Wu Hen had risked his life to save them, even though he knew that he would die. Wu Hen didn't have time to think, and he shouted loudly, "Don't fight. Quickly escape. You are not a match for Xuewu." Before he could even finish his words, he spouted a mouthful of purplish-black blood. His vision darkened, and his body fell from the sky. "Wu Hen!" Old Chun shouted loudly, but he was still unable to get past the poisonous palm to catch him. Xuewu laughed mockingly as he shook his head. "This is really interesting. Is Wu Hen so loyal because he's being controlled by someone else?" Xuewu looked at Wu Hen, who was falling from the sky, and he didn't show any pity for him. "You betrayed the enemy in the face of battle. It's already a mercy for you to die. Otherwise, when the fifth Saint Master decides to punish you, you will suffer a fate worse than death." Sizzle. At this moment, the giant blood-red palm print collided with the giant white net. The large number of feathers quickly turned pitch black, and the giant net only lasted for 3 breaths of time before it turned into dust. However, it was also these 3 breaths of time that gave the people of the Heavenly Law Alliance enough time to retreat. The thousands of people who were engulfed by the attack immediately retreated. However, there were still several hundred people who were in front of the battle formation, and they couldn't escape in time. Old Chun, Luo Xiong, and the others were all engulfed by the poisonous palm print. Despair welled up in their hearts at this moment, but they soon became resolute. As they looked at Su Yu, who was fighting intensely against the Pearl Scales Blood Centipede, as well as Wu Hen, who had sacrificed himself for them, they didn't cower. Instead, their eyes became filled with fighting spirit as they shouted, "Kill them!" They didn't need to say anything at this moment, as they could only use their actions, their fists, and their hot-bloodedness to prove what they were feeling. The several hundred people didn't retreat, but instead advanced forward. While the poisonous palm print was engulfed by the crowd's cries, they all charged toward Xuewu like moths flying into a flame. "You overestimate yourselves." Anger and shock appeared on Xuewu's face. He couldn't understand how a group of ants, who were like moths flying into a flame, could possess such power. Their resolute will to die caused his heart to shudder. "All of you die." As he shouted coldly, the poisonous palm print exploded and turned into a poisonous gas that engulfed the surroundings. Old Chun and the others, who were rushing over, were quickly engulfed by the gas. Old Chin's fighting spirit became even more intense, and he glared at Xuewu angrily. "Even if I die, There are still millions of Jinlong martial artists left. Even if you kill me, you won't be able to kill all of them. As Old Chen laughed, he shouted, "Let's go all out. We can only die. We can only die." That's right, they could only die. If they could even take a piece of their enemy's flesh after they died, it would still be worth it. The several hundred people's eyes, which were burning with resolute anger, were extremely dazzling at this moment. Even their bodies were frozen in place. It's like throwing an egg against a rock. Shui Wu's expression was ice cold as he looked at them, who were engulfed by the poisonous gas. The weaker one's cultivation was, the faster they would dissipate. In the twinkling of an eye, the 10 Heavenly Law Alliance's members had disappeared from the world, leaving behind nothing but their names. Chapter 652. I'll make a move first. A figure dashed out from the crowd. His left arm was empty, and his left eye was closed. Only his right eye was open. It was the young master of the South Pole Mountain Villa, the one-armed hero. During a great battle, his right arm had been cut off, and he had lost his only arm that could hold a long blade. However, his blade was still there. He held a long blade in his mouth, which was stained with blood. It was the blood of his enemies, as well as his own. As he laughed, he turned into a shooting star and fell from the sky, leaving behind a trail of light in the sky. It was as if he was the light in the dark, pointing out the direction of the human clan. Bang! His body was disappearing. First, it was his legs. Then it was his right arm. When it arrived in front of Shui Wu, there was only a head with a bloody blade in its mouth. Die, you scoundrel! The head flew 3 feet away from Shui Wu. At such a close distance, the young man's right eye shot out a beam of light. It was as if a divine weapon had pierced through Shui Wu's heart and struck his soul. At this moment, even someone as arrogant as Shui Wu felt his heart tremble. The unforgettable hatred in that lone eye and the boundless flames of vengeance were hard to ignore. Puff! The head was destroyed by the poison, along with the blade in its mouth. A foot away from Shui Wu, the one-armed young master was like a burning meteor. He left behind a magnificent silhouette in the world as he disappeared from the world. His blade did not even touch Shui Wu's hair. However, his body was like a peerless sword that pierced through Shui Wu's heart, as well as the souls of all the people around him. South Pole young master! Old Chun and Luo Xiong roared. They chased after the young master like shooting stars. Their magnificent bodies turned into numerous afterimages as they attacked their unsurpassable enemies. The magnificent scene shook everyone's hearts and made them cry silently. Just as Old Chun had said, even if he fell, there would still be thousands of people from the True Dragon clan. Old Chun, Luo Xiong, and the Annihilation team were not afraid of death. They turned into shooting stars and perished, all for the sake of killing their enemies and creating hope for the future generations. Don't forget me. A real man should die, so why should he be afraid? One of the people from the Heavenly Law Alliance, who had retreated a long time ago, shouted and rushed forward. Me too. Life is like a drama. How can one live a dull life? Let me have a grand and spectacular final battle. Ha ha ha. Don't forget about me when you're in the limelight. Father, mother, I finally understand the meaning of life, not for myself, but for those I protect. Unfortunately, by the time I understood, all of you had already left. Let this child pass on this protection to future generations. Father, mother, your son is here. Ha, let's attack together. Even if we're all wiped out, we'll use our blood to drown that red-furred monster. Charge! We will use our blood to restore the first land of the Jinlong continent. We will use our lives to create hope for the Jinlong continent. Kill! Battle cries instantly broke out. The 10,000 people who retreated were like a flood that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Their momentum was so strong that even the scattered poisonous gas was dispersed. No matter how powerful Shui Wu's poisonous palm was, it couldn't suppress 10,000 people, let alone their fearless will. Thud! Shui Wu retreated. Although it was only a single step, it betrayed the fear in his heart. He had never thought that humans could be so frightening. They were clearly just a group of ants, but they gave him an invincible aura. When Shui Wu came back to his senses, he was furious and ashamed. He had actually been scared off by a group of ants. "All of you die," he shouted loudly, revealing the fear in his heart that he couldn't hide. He struck out 10 palms consecutively, and each palm strike covered 1,000 people. 10 palms could kill 10,000 people. The Black Shadow Guard behind him were also shocked by the magnificent meteor annihilation. 10,000 people swooped down like a meteor. That kind of boldness, that kind of decisiveness, that kind of magnificence caused them to tremble from the bottom of their hearts. They were also shocked by the fact that the 7th Saint Master, who had always been merciless, was actually panicking. The 10,000 people had disregarded their lives and sworn to kill Shui Wu. They didn't care at all, as those 10 palms could kill all of them. Squeak! A childish squeak suddenly sounded from below them. They saw a pink Kylan struggling to hold onto the unconscious Traceless with its 2 little hoofs. It flapped its wings with great difficulty, which made it look exceptionally adorable. When it was 1,000 feet below them, the little Kylan used all of its strength to open its mouth and take a deep breath. All of a sudden, a gust of wind started to blow, and the poisonous gas within the 10 poisonous palms was sucked into the little Kylan's mouth. In the blink of an eye, the purple-black sky became clear, and the poisonous gas was sucked away by the wind. The little Kylan burped as it carried Traceless and flew to Old Chen's side. It threw Traceless to Old Chen, then squatted on his shoulder and bared its teeth at Shui Wu. It seemed to be panting with rage. This scene caused everyone to widen their eyes in shock. Even Shui Wu was stunned. His blood poison had been swallowed by a living creature? Fine, it had been swallowed, and it was still alive and kicking. What a top-grade spiritual pet. It seems that I have misjudged it. All right, this spiritual pet will also belong to me. Shui Wu regained his composure, and his body flickered as he turned into a shadow and tried to grab the little Kylan. "Protect him," Old Chen shouted. However, how could they outrun a level 3 fairy? Before they could defend themselves, Shui Wu had already flown in front of them. He laughed nastily as he tried to grab the little Kylan. Bang! Right at this moment, a strange muffled sound rang out. A round pearl, which was half blue and half yellow, was falling from the sky. It was falling towards Shui Wu's head. Shui Wu was startled, and when he looked at it, he sneered. Is this considered a sneak attack? The ball didn't contain any vital energy, and its falling momentum was quite ordinary. It was as if it was really falling, not crashing down. Get lost! Shui Wu raised his hand and waved it. A strong wind came out of his sleeve and tried to sweep the blue and yellow ball away. However, the strong wind didn't budge the falling ball in the slightest. Shui Wu finally realized that something was amiss. His seemingly ordinary strong wind contained a great amount of power, and even a spiritual artifact trajectory would be changed by it. However, not only did the ball not change its trajectory, but it also didn't move at all as it continued to press down on them. Get lost! Shui Wu's palm, which was covered with a layer of bloody aura, became serious as he slapped the ball. Even if his palm didn't manage to send the ball flying, its poison would have surely turned it into dust. However, when his hands came into contact with the ball, Shui Wu's expression became one of shock. A cracking sound was heard, followed by a miserable shriek. Shui Wu's hands had exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. It was the result of being crushed by a great power. The crowd was overwhelmed with shock, and they even forgot to breathe. What kind of object could crush a level 3 fairy's hands? However, this wasn't the end of it. After his hands exploded, the ball's momentum didn't change. It was as if it had just crushed an ant. Its great momentum crushed Shui Wu beneath it, and he fell to the ground at a seemingly ordinary speed. Rumble. It was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. The crowd, who were standing on the ground, felt as if the whole world was shaking. The crowd, who were standing in the sky, also felt a powerful shock wave from the ground, which forced them to retreat several hundred feet. At the same time, a giant cloud of dust appeared on the ground. It rose into the sky like a giant mushroom, which was several hundred feet tall. It was a magnificent sight. Such an earth-shattering scene caused the crowd to fall silent. What is that ball? Why does it have such a terrifying and earth-shattering momentum when it falls? While the crowd was still in a state of bewilderment, the dust disappeared, and the scene that appeared on the ground made everyone shudder in fear. They saw that the ground seemed to have been pierced by some kind of mighty power, and a deep, circular hole had appeared. With the hole as the center, 8 cracks, which were 10 feet wide, spread out in 8 different directions. One of the cracks ran through the entire central city, which had been split into 2. This was the scene of a ball falling down and smashing into the city. Even if 3 fairies attacked with all their might, they wouldn't be able to create such a scene. What kind of terrifying object was that ball? I'm late. A soft sigh resounded above their heads. The little Kylan's ears twitched, and it immediately jumped onto a silver-haired youth's shoulder. It then affectionately rubbed his neck. "Alliance Master! Alliance Master!" Everyone exclaimed loudly. The reverence in their hearts had already reached an extreme level, and it was obvious to all. As they looked at the youth's figure, many of them, who were also youths, didn't even feel jealous of him. Suyu's power was already close to that of a legend in their hearts. Old Chun was shocked by Suyu's methods, as he had easily killed Shui Wu. What was even more shocking was that the Pearl Scales Blood Centipede, which had been fighting with Suyu, had disappeared. "Alliance Master, where is that ferocious creature?" Old Chin was curious. All of a sudden, he noticed that there was a stream of fresh blood in Suyu's sleeves, which was winding along his wrist and flowing downwards. Old Chin was shocked. "Alliance Master, you are injured." When Suyu heard this, his expression became gloomy. He raised his head to look at the sky, as if he was trying to see through something with his soul eyes. None of them had noticed the fight between Suyu and the Pearl Scales Blood Centipede. That Pearl Scales Blood Centipede was really powerful, and it was proficient in eye techniques. Even the Eternal Stone King Armor's light screen couldn't block it. However, Suyu's arm wasn't injured by the Pearl Scales Blood Centipede. Instead, it had come from the end of the 9 heavens. A powerful aura had descended from the sky and taken the Pearl Scales Blood Centipede away. Before it left, it had tried to kill Suyu. It was only because Suyu had used his first dragon's body, the Dry Cloud 5 Elemental Formation, the 6-directional ruler, and the Eternal Stone King Armor at that critical moment that he had barely managed to withstand that attack. In the end, his arm had been cut open. Even though his first dragon's body had many protective measures, he was still injured. Moreover, Suyu hadn't been able to see his opponent's figure clearly. The only thing he could be sure of was that his opponent had come from the end of the 9 heavens. Who is that? Is there such an expert hidden in the Jinlong continent? Suyu's heart sank as he lowered his head to look at the wound on his arm. "Alliance Master." Old Chen realized that the situation was far from good. After all, the person who had injured the Alliance Master must be someone extraordinary. Suyu came back to his senses and waved his hand. "I'm fine. Just take a look at the injured Alliance members. Save the injured, and give the dead a proper burial." Suyu's tone was low. He had seen the one-armed young master turn into a shooting star, but he had no time to spare, so he could only let the little Kylan take action. That scene had also touched Suyu's heart. After he spoke, Suyu looked at the remaining 22 black shadow guards coldly. When Suyu looked at them, they instinctively retreated. However, they were faced with tens of thousands of eyes that were burning with anger. This time, they had suffered more than 100 casualties, while only one of them had fallen. "Wait, we surrender." How could the Black Shadow Guards dare to continue fighting? They surrendered decisively. In the end, the battle had ended with them surrendering. Who accepted your surrender? Suyu's gaze turned cold, and a mass of air quickly gathered in his right palm, forming a small black ball. It was a small ball that was formed from compressed air. A terrifying, destructive power reverberated in Suyu's palm. Those who surrender will not be killed. This has always been the case since ancient times. The Black Shadow Guards' faces turned pale. They could all feel the aura of death. However, before they could finish their words, Suyu interrupted them. "Since ancient times, wherever you have gone, you have left no survivors. Have they never surrendered? Have you ever cared about what has happened since ancient times? Your hands have been stained with the blood of the Jinlong continent's people, so you cannot be spared. The Black Shadow Guards' faces turned pale. They had never imagined that they would one day be slaughtered. Isn't your Jinlong continent's army known as the Army of Benevolence and Righteousness? Aren't you afraid of being criticized by others for such a massacre? They try to quibble. However, Suyu laughed for a long time. Who told you that the Heavenly Law Alliance is an army of benevolence and righteousness? Look at the Heavenly Law Alliance's members. Look at their eyes. What kind of army is that? As he looked around, he could not see benevolence and righteousness, but hatred and vengeance. Chapter 653. Anyone who dares to invade the Jinlong continent will be killed by my sword. Suyu coldly announced their fates. As he loosened his grip, the black sphere in his palm started spinning as it swept through the area where they were. As the wind howled, their bodies were torn to shreds and turned into nothingness. The Buddhist saint's 8 characters fighting symbol formula, along with the first dragon's body, had already reached a high level. Only the last stage, the swordsman formula, was left. It was also the last stage of the Buddhist saint's 8 characters remnant scroll. As it was a perfect stage, it was difficult to guess how powerful the swordsman formula was. Just by relying on the fighting symbol formula, he was able to fight against a grade 1 fairy. So, the final swordsman formula would surely be extraordinary. Alliance Master, isn't it inappropriate to kill them? Old Chen asked respectfully. Although they deserved to die, we still didn't manage to get any information about the enemy from them. Killing them would surely vent his anger, but it would be too hasty. How much could a trifling shadow guard know? If you want to interrogate them, isn't the person down there more suitable? Suyu asked calmly. His body floated like a shadow, and he landed beside the deep pit in an instant. As he landed on the ground, the giant pit collapsed once again, and the bottom of the pit, which had been smashed by the sphere, was gradually revealed. A blue and yellow sphere was quietly lying at the bottom, and a person's body, which had been smashed to pieces, was crushed beneath it. His armor had been shattered by a great force, and his chest had caved in. His limbs had been torn apart, and blood was gushing out of his mouth along with his flesh. It seemed like he was on the verge of death. As Suyu landed on the ground, he extended his arm and placed the 9 jade spiritual pearl on the blue and yellow sphere. As a light tinkling sound echoed out, the blue and yellow sphere disappeared into thin air. This sphere was quite similar to the Dry Cloud 5 elemental formation's blue sphere, but it also had a vague resemblance to the Underworld Pearl. As Suyu was unable to store it in the air, he had to use such a clumsy method to store it in the 9 jade spiritual pearl. The crowd was astonished, as they all wondered how many powerful magical treasures Suyu had on him. However, their attention quickly fell on Xue Wu's body. The infamous Saint Lord Xue Wu, who was a bloodthirsty person, was on the brink of death. Everyone felt like they were in a dream. Crack! Suyu's gaze turned ice cold, and he stomped his foot on his abdomen. A faint cracking sound could be heard as his dantian was crushed, and he became a cripple. I'll leave the interrogation to you. I don't think I need to tell you what you need to ask. Just report to me afterward, Suyu said. Yes, Alliance Master. Old Chun, Luo Xiong, and the others were filled with reverence. Suyu nodded, then flew into the air and looked at the Heavenly Law Alliance's people. Looking at the miserable, pale, sorrowful faces of the crowd, he slowly opened his mouth. His tone was calm, but every word was enunciated very clearly, very slowly, and very forcefully. We have won this battle. His calm words were like a thunderclap, penetrating everyone's ears. Yes, they had won. After paying a heavy price, they had won. When the True Dragon Army had lost time and time again, when the people of the True Dragon Army had lost all hope, they had won. He had killed more than 200 enemy half-celestials and killed Holy Lord Xue Wu. Reclaiming the northern continent's branch of the dynasty became the Jinlong continent's first victory since the upheaval. Such a glorious battle record would surely become a historical moment that would be remembered by the later generations. Their sacrifice hadn't been in vain, as they had given the Jinlong continent hope. The news of the human race's complete victory would surely awaken even more rebels, who would join them and set the entire continent ablaze. "We have finally won." A desolate shout came from the crowd. It was filled with grief, excitement, and an indescribable sense of gratification. "We have won." It was like a stone had been thrown into water, creating many waves. The crowd became excited and cheered, their shouts shaking the entire sky. Suyu also smiled. The Heavenly Law Alliance's members felt the joy of victory, while Suyu felt the joy of having their souls saved. After this battle, they would be able to escape from the pessimism they had been suppressing for a long time. This was what Suyu cared about the most. Afterward, Suyu slowly descended and stood in the sky above the palace master's manor. Xiaoqin looked at the familiar hall. This place was once under Ling Xiaoyin's control. Now, things remained the same, but people had changed. "Who are you?" Suyu looked down at the middle-aged woman. It was obvious that she was the leader. As for the heavily injured old man in the deep pit, although he had woken up, no one was around him. Palace Master Nanguang's heart thumped. Facing a peerless expert like Suyu, who had killed dozens of half-fairies with a single palm strike, she felt as if she was facing a great enemy. "I am Nanguang, one of the Empire of Darkness's 4 great palace masters. Greetings, Alliance Master Su." Nanguang didn't dare to be rude, so she hurriedly greeted him. "Nanguang?" Suyu nodded calmly. "Yes, the Heavenly Law Alliance will take over the Northern Continent's Empire of Darkness branch. Go back and report this to the Empire of Darkness." "What?" Palace Master Nanguang was shocked. It was just as she had expected. Suyu would take over this place. But this is where the Empire of Darkness branch is located. "I'm afraid." Cold sweat broke out on Palace Master Nanguang's forehead. Suyu tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and walked past her. He then entered the Palace Master's manor without turning his head. "I'm informing you, not discussing it with you. Go. Also, leave behind all the resources of the Empire of Darkness branch." Suyu instructed her before entering the depths of the Palace Master's manor. Palace Master Nanguang was both angry and embarrassed. Suyu was too overbearing. However, as she recalled all the times he had attacked her, she immediately restrained her emotions. When she looked at the members of the Heavenly Law Alliance, her heart was filled with complicated emotions. The scene of them turning into meteors and dying without fear in the face of death had deeply shocked her. Even she felt a sense of respect for such a team. "Fine, it's up to you." Palace Master Nanguang sighed silently. She then handed over a shiny golden key to Old Chun and the others. "People of the Empire of Darkness, follow me." Palace Master Nanguang shouted in a deep voice. She then led the people of the Empire of Darkness branch and left the area. Inspector Bai Yun, who had been silent all this while, suddenly became angry. "Nanguang, how could you hand over our territory so easily? Are you tired of living? If the Seven Lords' Palace finds out about this, you won't be able to escape death." Hearing this, Nanguang could no longer suppress the anger in her heart. She sneered and said, "Oh, Inspector Bai Yun, why didn't you say anything when Suyu was here just now? Why are you blaming me now?" Inspector Bai Yun's face turned red from the retort. He said angrily, "How dare you? How dare you speak to me like that?" However, Palace Master Nanguang only scolded him coldly. "Inspector Bai Yun, you should think about how to explain this to the Seven Lords' Palace. You won't be able to escape responsibility for this matter." "You." Inspector Bai Yun's lips moved, but he didn't say anything else. His face was full of worry. If the Northern Continent branch was attacked by the enemy, it would not be a big deal for him to escape as an admiral. However, if the Heavenly Dao Union were to occupy it, he would definitely not be able to get past the Seven Lords' Palace. "Sain, you..." "No, Suyu's power is far beyond our imagination. When we return, we will report the details to the Seven Lords' Palace. I believe that the Seven Lords' Palace will understand." Inspector Bai Yun sighed. Palace Master Nanguang nodded in agreement. "Yes, with how powerful the Seven Lords' Palace is, we won't be able to hide any of our lies from them. As such, we can only tell them the truth. However, it's still fine for the others. However, I'm afraid that we will have a hard time dealing with the Third Lord. The Third Lord? Inspector Bai Yun's face darkened. The Third Lord is a harsh person. It is inevitable that he will be punished. We can only resign ourselves to fate. Palace Master Nan Guang turned around and looked in the direction of the Palace Master's manor. She then sighed. Inu, I hope that you will take care of yourself. Perhaps the other lords would give up, but the Third Lord would not let it go so easily. After nightfall, the central city, which had once been filled with bloodshed, fell into an unavoidable silence. No one would ever forget the bloody army that had descended from the sky. Under the leadership of the Heavenly Law Alliance's new alliance master, they had won the first battle in the Zhenlong continent. They had also reclaimed their land. In the dead of night, people were coming and going in Su Yu's room. The people in charge of the central city were reporting to Su Yu in detail about the situation in the city. The great families in the city all brought gifts to greet the new ruler. There were strong martial artists who had come to join the Heavenly Law Alliance. There were also reports on the various matters that had been dealt with after the great battle. The queue outside the door stretched from the room all the way to the main gate of the Palace Master's manor. This scene lasted until midnight. Moreover, such days continued for a full 10 days. Even Su Yu found it difficult to bear. Fortunately, the situation had gradually stabilized, and he had finally gotten some relief from his busy schedule. In the courtyard, Su Yu let out a long sigh of relief and stretched his body. His blood-red eyes were somewhat haggard. This was even more tiring than a great battle. However, everything had finally stabilized. The Alliance Master's decision was truly far-sighted. Old Chun, who was standing behind Su Yu, had a look of admiration in his eyes. Apart from the Empire of Darkness, there are only a few places in the Northern Continent that are still resisting. The Northern Continent's branch of the Empire of Darkness is one of them. Not only do they have a city that has been established for many years, but they also have powerful resources that are enough to support the Heavenly Law Alliance's operations. Back then, Su Yu had led the army north without hesitation. He had not discussed this with anyone. At first, many people had doubted him, but now it seemed like he had a good foresight. He had solved the Heavenly Law Alliance's problem of territory and resources in one fell swoop. Although he was young, he was quite shrewd and didn't seem like a young man at all. So he waved his hand. From now on, you can leave the Heavenly Law Alliance's miscellaneous matters to the elders. Just leave the important matters to me. Understood, Old Chen replied respectfully. How is it? Did you get any information from Shui Wu? Su Yu asked. After 10 days had passed, he should have gotten most of what he wanted from Shui Wu. Hearing this, Old Chen's expression became gloomy. He then said in a deep voice, I came here just to report this matter to the Alliance Master. Oh, from his expression, it seemed like he had gotten some bad information from Shui Wu. Speak, Su Yu said. Alliance Master, the Northern Continent situation isn't good. It might become the most dangerous region, Old Chen said. What do you mean? Su Yu raised his brows. What does he mean by the most dangerous region? Old Chen said in a grave voice. According to Shui Wu, the reason why they suddenly mobilized Shui Wu from the Western Continent to wipe out the Northern Continent's Phoenix Cabinet and the Northern Continent's Empire of Darkness is because the Fifth Saint Master will soon come out of the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds. The Fifth Saint Master, who possessed the heaven-extinguishing divine palm. Su Yu's heart shuddered slightly. According to Wu Hen, the Fifth Saint Master, who could use the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, could contend against even a later-stage fairy. After the Fifth Saint Master comes out of seclusion, he will patrol the continent. His first battle will be the Northern Continent. Therefore, the other Saint Masters tried their best to get rid of the obstacles in the Northern Continent so that they would not be blamed by the Fifth Saint Master. This was the reason why the Heavenly Law Alliance, the Phoenix Cabinet, and the Northern Continent's Empire had been attacked at the same time. That was because the Fifth Saint Master was about to arrive. Su Yu suddenly felt a sense of urgency. Moreover, Shui Wu said that the Fifth Saint Master has more than 1,000 half-celestials with him. That's half of the otherworldly experts. 1,000? Su Yu's pupils contracted. Why are there suddenly so many of them? Old Chen said in a deep voice. It has already been half a year since the last battle. In this half a year, under the circumstances that no one obstructs them, it is more than enough for them to transfer over 1,000 half-immortals over. If these 1,000 half-fairies really follow the fifth Saint Master and leave the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds, I'm afraid that our Jinlong continent will really have no hope. Su Yu's heart also became serious. Apart from the divine masters, who would dare to underestimate such a huge lineup of over 1,000 half-fairies? Moreover, there was still the unfathomable fifth Saint Master. How long will it take for them to come out of seclusion? Su Yu asked. Old Chan said in a deep voice. It will take at most 2 months, or at least a month. The fifth Saint Master will surely come out of seclusion, and his first battle will be against the northern continent. His words caused Su Yu's heart to shudder once again. Even a month's time was so short. Chapter 654. Su Yu thought for a moment. Old Chun, have you counted the resources stored in the Empire's branch? Old Chun nodded. All kinds of elixirs, cultivation techniques, materials, and treasures are enough for our Heavenly Law Alliance to use for a month. A month? That's not too bad. Su Yu's eyes flickered. There were not many soldiers stationed in the Empire's branch. There were only 10 region masters, 1 palace master, and a small number of silver-clothed and purple-clothed guards. Their annual consumption of resources to sustain 10,000 people for a month was already their limit. Gather all the elixir masters in the Alliance, and quickly make all kinds of elixirs that can increase one's cultivation. Give priority to the most talented Alliance members, as we are still too weak, Su Yu instructed. In the previous battle, the Heavenly Law Alliance's members' fighting power had been exposed. 10,000 people had fought against 23 people, and they had sacrificed a few hundred people to kill one of their opponents who was heavily injured. With such a fighting power, facing the fifth Saint Master's army of 1,000 people would be like throwing an egg against a rock. Old Chin was shocked. Su Yu wanted to lead his army to face the fifth Saint Master's army? That was equivalent to all of the otherworldly invaders' forces in the Jinlong continent. How could they achieve such a feat with just 10,000 people? Alliance Master, please forgive me for speaking bluntly. Even if we gathered all of the Jinlong continent's materials and alchemists, it would still be difficult to raise the Heavenly Law Alliance's fighting power to the level of the fifth Saint Master's army. We only have 22 crystals half-fairy realm experts, and less than 101 crystals half-fairy realm experts. This is the result of the world's change 3 years ago, which caused the spiritual energy to become 10 times denser. With our current strength, how can we face them? Old Chin voiced out his doubts. In Old Chin's eyes, it was already difficult for them to win this battle. Facing the fifth Saint Master's army, which was 10 times stronger than before, was like a fantasy. Do as I say, Su Yu scolded, not allowing anyone to object. Old Chin shivered and his heart tightened. Yes, Alliance Master. Although the Jinlong continent is vast, where can we find a place to stay? The southern continent, the western continent, or the eastern continent? Old Chun, do you see a way out? Su Yu turned around, his eyes clear and bright. His words were filled with a soul-shaking voice that was deafening to the ears. Old Chin's heart shuddered. Yes, how could there be a place for them in the Jinlong continent? They had nowhere to run and could only fight with their backs against the wall. Alliance leader, please understand. I'll get it done right away. However, the materials are limited. Furthermore, Phoenix Master Chio, who is the best at alchemy, is still unconscious. I'm afraid that our progress will be limited in a month's time, Old Chin added, his eyes filled with worry. Su Yu nodded. All right, I got it. Just follow my instructions. I have another way. Finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and returned to his room. Old Chin bowed and took his leave. He immediately gathered the remaining alchemists from the Heavenly Dao Union and the Northern Continent's Dynasty branch to refine elixirs that could raise one's cultivation level. Life and death depended on this. In the house, the coldness on Su Yu's face disappeared and was replaced by gentleness. In his room, there were 3 figures lying quietly. Elder Jiu, Phoenix Master Chio, and Xia Jingyu. Do you really want to fight the fifth Saint Master? Elder Jiu opened his eyes and sat up with great difficulty. He had woken up a few days ago, but because his injuries were too severe, he had to recuperate under Su Yu's protection. Su Yu's eyes were filled with respect, and he said calmly, "If we don't fight, we will die. We have no other choice." Elder Jio's eyes, which were usually filled with drunkenness, were now clear and filled with complex emotions. How could he have imagined that the lad he had protected in the past would grow to the point where he could protect him? Moreover, he had even taken over the Heavenly Law Alliance and become the alliance master of this influential faction. There were only 3 years between them. Then, do you have a way? I once saw the 5th Saint Master's clone attack. Even the first world senior, who possessed a powerful body, was suppressed by a single palm strike. Elder Jio looked into Su Yu's eyes and asked, "Was that palm strike the heaven-extinguishing divine palm?" The 5th Saint Master could rely on such a palm strike to fight an ordinary level 9 fairy. Su Yu thought about it for a moment, then shook his head with a bitter smile. "I don't have one. We told Old Chun that he had another way. He was just trying to comfort him. After all, how could it be so easy to raise the cultivation levels of 10,000 people?" Now that Elder Jio had asked him about it, he told him the truth. Elder Jio sighed. "Then, how do you plan to settle them? After a month, the army will come, and all of the Heavenly Law Alliance's members will be slaughtered. You might not care about their lives, but what about your fiancée, Qin Sienna? Also, do you have a close relationship with Lord Yu? Now that the 5th Saint Master has come out of seclusion with his army, I think that the Jinlong continent situation will undergo a drastic change. I can feel that they have already accumulated enough power. What awaits the Jinlong continent is the reincarnation from 10,000 years ago. A massacre is unavoidable. 10,000 years ago, the Jinlong continent had been plunged into a boundless calamity. Now, 10,000 years later, history would repeat itself. As Su Yu looked at Xia Jingyu's peaceful and dreamy face, his heart became heavy. How could he protect Xia Jingyu when such a calamity would descend in a month? As for Sienna, they had just reunited. Would they have to be separated by life and death again? Su Yu's heart became heavy. In fact, apart from them, there were still many people in the Jinlong continent who needed protection. From the Shunyue Island to the 100 Territories Alliance, then to the Northern Continent's Empire, there were many people who needed protection. Once the 5th Saint Master arrived with his army, everything would be razed to the ground. Would history repeat itself? Su Yu wasn't confident that he could survive such a calamity. "I have an idea, but I don't know if you're willing to take the trouble to do so," Elder Jio said. Su Yu was surprised. "Oh, Elder Jio, please tell me. Since they had such an opportunity, why did the Heavenly Law Alliance suffer such a crushing defeat? Why did they even injure him? It's quite simple. Go to the Empire of Darkness. Here is a letter that I wrote. If you hand it to the King of Darkness, he will be able to call for reinforcements." Elder Jio took out a letter from his bosom. The words on it had dried up, and it was a letter that he had prepared a few days ago. Did he already expect such a day to come? How many soldiers does the Empire of Darkness have? Su Yu squinted his eyes. He didn't doubt the Empire of Darkness's power. Although the Empire of Darkness was still besieged and hadn't even fought a battle, Su Yu didn't doubt that it had the power to fight against the otherworldly experts. The Empire of Darkness was a faction that had existed for 10,000 years. It was founded by the Jojo Emperor's 5 great guards, and it had always been the continent's strongest faction. No one knew how much power it had accumulated over the past 10,000 years. This terrifying faction had never shown itself before. How many soldiers do they have? Elder Jio smiled mysteriously. There's so many that the 5th Saint Master only dares to come out of seclusion. Su Yu's pupils contracted slightly. In other words, the 5th Saint Master hid in the dragon abyss of the 9 underworld for 3 years because he was afraid of the Empire of Darkness. Just how powerful is the Empire of Darkness? Now that the 5th Saint Master is about to come out of seclusion, you should pass this message to him. It's time for the Empire of Darkness to make a move. This is a letter that I wrote personally. You should pass it to the King of Darkness. He will know what to do. Su Yu's eyes were filled with curiosity. Elder Jio, is the King of Darkness still alive? Ever since he came out of seclusion and defeated the 2 clans of the 8 great ancient clans, he has never shown himself again. Even the 7 Lords of Darkness don't know whether he is still alive or not. So, can I deliver this letter to him? Hearing this, Elder Jew laughed. Him? Humph. No matter who dies, he won't die. You can rest assured. As for this letter, you just need to tell me that it's written personally. Then, someone will pass it to the King of Darkness. Is that so? A curious look appeared in Su Yu's eyes. He was quite curious about the Jinlong continent's overlord. This legendary figure was fully deserving of being called a peerless monarch. His figure shrouded the whole continent. Ever since he entered the Empire of Darkness, his name had resounded like thunder. Back then, Su Yu was just a nobody who had come from Xinhui Island. Now, he had the opportunity to meet such a legendary figure in person. As he thought of this, Su Yu became even more interested. Fine, I will go to the Empire of Darkness. Su Yu nodded. He had to go and borrow soldiers to protect the northern continent and all the people he loved. Elder Geo smiled and stuffed the letter into Su Yu's hands. As he looked at him once again, he couldn't help but sigh. There are times when I misjudged you. When I met you in the past, I never expected that you would reach such a level. It seems like I have become old, and my eyesight isn't as good as before. Su Yu smiled calmly. Since you have a disciple like Daily Eye, why do you need to be so modest? His talent is extraordinary, and he will surely become someone great. The reason why Elder Geo accepted this alien race with the head of a dragon and the body of a human was that he was extraordinary. Elder Geo was startled, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Daily Eye, forget it. There is no point in telling you. You should prepare to leave as soon as possible. It is better to borrow soldiers to prevent future troubles. All right. I will leave after I settle some matters. So you didn't forget that there were still many unresolved matters. Elder Geo, may I ask where Palace Master Ling is now? Su Yu's eyes were filled with anticipation. He had entered the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion for Ling Xiaotian. Elder Geo patted his head. I almost forgot. He took the wine gourd from his shoulder and shook it vigorously. It wasn't wine that poured out. Instead, it was a faint golden light ring. The light ring gradually expanded until it was the size of a human. It was the dragon-shaped coffin. Although this item is a broken low-grade divine artifact, it is quite extraordinary. It can absorb the spiritual energy of the world and maintain the body of a severely injured person. It is only because of this that Palace Master Ling is still alive. Elder Geo was full of praise for the dragon-shaped coffin. However, Su Yu knew that it was impossible for the dragon-shaped coffin and the vital energy left behind in the past to keep Ling Xiaotian alive. It was Elder Geo who had used his own vital energy to keep Ling Xiaotian alive. Elder Geo, I will never forget your great kindness. Su Yu didn't explain and just bowed. Elder Geo's face was filled with gratification and appreciation. He chuckled. For the sake of your past kindness, you didn't hesitate to go to the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion and risk your life for Palace Master Ling. Elder Geo, you are flattering me. Su Yu smiled modestly. His principle was to repay kindness. In his eyes, there was nothing special about it. Chapter 655. Ling Xiaotian's familiar face came into view. His facial features were old, his body shriveled, and his appearance haggard. He looked like a completely different person from the once high-spirited Northern Continent Empire's palace master. Looking at the face that had aged because of him, Su Yu's heart was filled with warmth. In order to extend his future, to create a tomorrow for him, and to save his life, Ling Xiaotian had sacrificed himself to pass on the bloodline of the evil ghost to Su Yu, giving him a new beginning in life. As for him, he had aged and died. Su Yu silently took out all of the crystals from his space ring and placed them all into the dragon-shaped coffin. The dragon-shaped coffin silently absorbed the vital energy, slowly releasing a special energy that entered Ling Xiaotian's body. His shriveled body began to fill up at a speed visible to the naked eye, and he regained his luster. His old face also gradually regained its human color, and his handsome facial features reappeared. However, his head of white hair could no longer return to its former state. His eyelids twitched, and a pair of deep black eyes slowly opened. "Palace Masterling," Suyu called out softly. The moment he opened his eyes, the shackles binding his heart were finally released. The feeling of being relieved of a heavy burden turned into a smile and gratification that bloomed on his lips. Ling Xiaotian was at a loss at first, but he gradually woke up. He had been asleep for a long time, and his speech was unclear. "Inu, you are still alive?" Although he had been asleep, Ling Xiaotian knew that he had lived for a long time. He had never thought that he would see the light of day again. Suyu nodded, and with a smile, he told him everything that had happened in the past 3 years, from the vengeful Black Snow Devil King to the current Heavenly Law Alliance Master. After listening to him, Ling Xiaotian, who had completely recovered, let out a long sigh. He looked at Suyu with an indescribable emotion. "Back then, I had only kept my promise. As long as I was alive, I would protect you. I never thought that you would become the Heavenly Law Alliance Master." His words were filled with emotion. There was admiration for Suyu, pride for his achievements, and helplessness for Suyu leaving the Empire of Darkness to become the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. His heart was still filled with the Empire of Darkness, even though he had almost died there. "Palace Master, I will set off for the Empire of Darkness now. The grudge between me and the Empire of Darkness has been settled. Please be at ease," Suyu said, seeing through his thoughts. As expected, a relaxed expression appeared on Ling Xiaotian's face. "That's good. Since that's the case, you should make a move quickly. I'll leave the northern continent to you." Suyu nodded. "Elder Geo and Palace Masterling, please help me take care of Phoenix Master Chio and Lord Yu. I will surely return within 3 days." Elder Geo nodded. "Yes, there is no need to worry. Lord Yu is only unconscious, but her life is not in danger. She should be fine. As for Phoenix Master Chio, although her injuries have stabilized, she still needs some special elixirs. I don't have them with me, but the headquarters of the Empire should have them. When you borrow the troops, you can ask for them." Over the past 10 days, he had managed to stabilize Phoenix Master Chio's condition with the help of resources, but her life was still in danger. "These are the elixirs that you need to take with you. Take them all, and remember to bring them back." Elder Geo tossed a jade pendant over. Suyu caught it in his hand and scanned it. He was able to see its contents clearly. "Phoenix Tail Purple Fire Pill, Peerless Moon Fall Pill. All right, I got it." Suyu muttered softly. "I'll take my leave first." After he spoke, Suyu flew away. What a powerful soul energy. Suyu's seemingly casual actions shocked Elder Geo. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Ling Xiaotian, who was beside him, clasped his hands behind his back and looked in the direction that Suyu had left. He wore a benevolent smile as he spoke meaningfully. "Elder Geo, now that things have come to this, do you still want to hide your identity?" His words were abrupt. According to their seniority and abilities, Ling Xiaotian was just a small fry in front of Elder Geo, yet he still dared to speak to him in such a manner. Elder Geo squinted his eyes. "Oh, who are you? Are you really just a palace master of the Northern Continent's empire?" Ling Xiaotian turned around and looked at Elder Geo. He was calm and composed, as if he wasn't afraid of Elder Geo at all. He then said calmly, "Elder Geo, it would be better if you don't know who I am. After all, you might get yourself killed if you do." His words were filled with killing intent, which made one's heart shudder. At this moment, Ling Xiaotian seemed like he had changed from a person who was on the brink of death to a completely different person. He was mysterious and strange, completely unlike Ling Xiaotian. "Who are you?" Elder Geo's expression changed, as if he was facing a great enemy. Ling Xiaotian looked at him with a sharp and profound gaze. "I already said that it wouldn't do you any good if you knew. You just need to know that I don't have any evil intentions." Elder Geo's eyes flickered, and he only calmed down after a long while. "Okay, I don't have any evil intentions in hiding my identity. I just want to protect myself. I hope that's the case. Suyu is very important to me, and if he dies, no one can save you." Ling Xiaotian left behind these words calmly before he flew away. However, before he left, his gaze passed by Elder Geo and fell on Phoenix Master Chio. He then said calmly, Phoenix Master Chio's injuries are no small matter. If I'm not mistaken, she was attacked by an all-creation old monster. You should take care of yourself and remind Suyu that I don't want him to die just like this. An all-creation old monster? Elder Gio turned his head around in shock and stared at Phoenix Master Chio. He couldn't believe that such a terrifying existence would dare to attack Phoenix Master Chio. Where are you going? Elder Gio turned his head around and looked at Ling Xiaotian, who was about to leave. Ling Xiaotian revealed a mysterious smile. Tell Suyu that we will meet again soon. Elder Gio looked at Ling Xiaotian's departing back in shock. Who is he? After he pondered this for a long while, he muttered softly, It is rumored that the northern continent's Inu area is the birthplace of the Empire of Darkness, and it is guarded by a mysterious expert for generations. Could Ling Xiaotian be that mysterious expert? Suyu, who was unaware of this, landed in the backyard. In the yard, Sienna was sitting under the shade of a tree. She was holding 5 fiery red feathers in her hands, and her face was filled with seriousness as she observed them carefully. It seemed like there were mysterious words carved on them. At this moment, a shadow fell on the feathers, and when Sienna raised her head, she saw a familiar face. Brother Suyu. Sienna immediately revealed a cute smile, and 2 swirls appeared on her cheeks. What are you looking at? Suyu squatted down and pulled her into his embrace. Sienna blushed, but she obediently lay in his embrace and leaned her head on his shoulder. She blew her fragrant breath into Suyu's ear and said, It's a feather left for me in the Fairy King's ruins. It seems like there's a medical technique on it, but I don't understand it. Brother Suyu, please help me comprehend it. Medical technique? Suyu glanced at it, and his expression became slightly unnatural. It was an extremely rare medical technique, and it was unexpectedly used to treat people whose dantians had been destroyed. Everyone knew that once one's dantian was destroyed, one's cultivation would be crippled. Suyu was quite knowledgeable, but he had never heard that a destroyed dantian could be treated. However, the treatment method was quite strange. This technique required a large amount of primordial yin, which was combined with the Fairy King's liquid to reconstruct the dantian. Moreover, the reconstructed dantian would be much larger than an ordinary person's dantian. It's really strange that such a treatment method exists in this world. Suyu clicked his tongue in wonder. Brother Suyu, how did you manage to understand it so quickly? Why can't I understand it? Sienna pouted and wore a defeated look on her face. Suyu smiled and stroked her head. Hee, you will understand it when you grow up. This technique involved dual cultivation between a man and a woman, so it would be strange if she could understand it. Sienna isn't young anymore. Sienna puffed up her cheeks and glared at Suyu angrily. She looked quite adorable. Suyu was slightly startled as he looked at her mature face. She had really grown up. Sienna, if you have time, please take care of Phoenix Master Chio and Lord Yu. I will go out for a while, but I will come back soon, Suyu said. Sienna understood Suyu's current situation, so she obediently nodded her head. All right, Brother Suyu, I will be fine if I'm alone. Oh, by the way, Brother Suyu, Sister Yu, oh no, Sister Jingyu has something for me to pass to you. Sienna took out a book from her pocket. It was the Starry Sky Heavenly Book. In the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds, Xia Jingyu had asked Sienna to pass it to Suyu. Unfortunately, Suyu had only just met Qin Sienna now. What is this? Suyu asked curiously as he took it. It seemed like this book had been with Sienna for some time. What did Xia Jingyu want to pass to Suyu at that time? Suyu was curious, so he tried to open it. However, he discovered that this heavenly book was a refined divine artifact, and it contained a wisp of its master's will. Suyu could rely on his powerful soul to erase the will that Xia Jingyu had left behind, but it would harm Xia Jingyu. This was given to me by Sister Jingyu when she saved me in the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds. At that time, she sacrificed herself to save me. I didn't expect that Sister Yu was actually Sister Jingyu. It's no wonder that she saved me. Sienna was still moved by Suyu's words. Suyu was startled. The will in the book would disappear along with the death of its master. At that time, Xia Jingyu had been prepared to die, so she had decided to pass this book to Suyu. What was in the book that was so important that Xia Jingyu would entrust it to him before her death? Okay, I will accept it. When Xia Jingyu wakes up, I will ask her directly. Suyu nodded, then kissed Xiener's forehead. Xiener, wait for me. I will come back soon. Xiener's face became flushed, and she shyly waved at Suyu as he left. Suyu turned around and looked at the petite figure that was standing in the sunset, waving goodbye to him. His heart was moved. She had always been by his side, and she had always placed him in the most important position in her heart. She was so weak and small, and she needed to be protected. After 4 years of trials and tribulations, it was time for them to settle their relationship. Xiener, wait for me to come back. Once the continent's matters are settled, I will give you an explanation for our engagement. Suyu smiled as he made up his mind. Chapter 656. What did you say? Xiener was startled, but she quickly understood what he meant. Her small face was as red as an apple, and it felt hot. She stamped her feet, lowered her head, and ran away. Her big eyes were filled with shyness. Suyu heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at her retreating figure. Between Xiener and Xia Jingyu, he had finally made his choice. He could not let Xiener down. Suyu felt as if a huge burden had been lifted from his heart. Without any reluctance, he tore through the air and flew into the distant sky. Northern continent, Phoenix Cabinet. The once glorious Phoenix Cabinet was now desolate and uninhabited. Palaces and pavilions that had been destroyed by the battle could be seen everywhere. Broken fences and dilapidated walls could be seen. Mountains and rivers fill one's eyes. Falling flowers and wind hurt one's heart. It is better to pity those in front of you. On the lakeside, a handsome young man with a well-defined face was muttering to himself. He had a faint smile on his face. Numerous half-immortals stood ramrod straight behind him. They held blades in their hands, and they were murderous, cold, and extremely dignified. However, they did not move at all, as if they were wooden poles. They were extremely respectful. The Phoenix Cabinet, a famous sect that gathers geniuses and beauties in the Zhenlong continent, is finally beneath my feet. Looking at it from afar, the beauties are as beautiful as flowers, living up to their name. The handsome young man was also a divine master. Now, when the 5th Saint Master is patrolling, I will be able to give him a big gift. The handsome young man smiled and said, I asked you to pick some beautiful women from the captives. How is it going? The guard behind him was very respectful. 6th Saint Master, it has been done. He clapped his hands, and 10 beautiful disciples of the Phoenix Cabinet were escorted over. As far as the eye could see, they were either charming, pure, cold, arrogant, or delicate. They had all sorts of temperaments and exquisite appearances, and it caused one to exclaim endlessly with admiration. The 6th Saint Master looked at them one by one and furrowed his brows. They are not bad, but their cultivation levels are too low. A woman's primordial yin will accumulate as her cultivation level increases. Are there no beautiful women with high cultivation levels? 6th Saint Master, in terms of appearance, the Phoenix Cabinet's master and the former eldest disciple, Fairy Feng, are the most beautiful. They're so exquisite that the 5th Saint Master would definitely like them. However, these two have already lost their virginity. I'm afraid that it will be difficult for the 5th Saint Master to take a liking to them, the guard replied while trembling with fear. Phoenix Cabinet Master and Feng Xianzi. The two of them are indeed peerless beauties that are rarely seen in this world. I can't help but feel pity for them. The 6th Saint Master was in charge of attacking the Phoenix Cabinet, so he had naturally seen the two of them before. Their beauty was indeed astonishing. Such a woman was actually robbed of her virginity. What a waste. The 6th Saint Master sighed with regret. The guard were also secretly pained. Those two delicate and beautiful women could be said to be the best in the world, yet someone beat them to it. It was truly a pity. What they didn't know was that both of them had their first time taken by the same person. 6th Saint Master, how should we deal with the two of them? Since they have lost their value, can you reward them to our brothers? The 6th Saint Master needed virgins, but they didn't need them. Other than those two exquisite beauties, there were also many beautiful women in the Phoenix Cabinet. To them, This place was like paradise on earth. After the sacred lord is done playing with those two women, I will naturally reward them to you. The sixth Saint Master's eyes were filled with flames, and the corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile. However, now is not the time. Let's talk about this after the fifth Saint Master has enjoyed them. Although the two of them have lost their virginity, their primordial ink might not be completely exhausted. Now is not the time for us to enjoy them. The same goes for all of you. Before the fifth Saint Master's inspection ends, none of the captives are allowed to touch a single hair on the two women. Otherwise, if you ruin the fifth Saint Master's plan, I will destroy both your bodies and souls. As the sixth Saint Master spoke, his voice became stern and extremely harsh. Yes, everything was done according to the fifth Saint Master's inspection. Everything has been handled properly. I just don't know how Shui Wu and Wu Hen are doing. The Northern Continent is the first battle of the fifth Saint Master's inspection. Nothing can go wrong, the sixth Saint Master muttered. The guard behind him said, Sixth Saint Master, you don't have to worry. The seventh Saint Master, Shui Wu, and the eighth Saint Master, Wu Hen, have brought their elite troops with them. It should not be a problem for them to deal with two insignificant factions. Upon hearing this, the sixth Saint Master's eyes flickered with a deep and wise light. I'm not worried about Wu Hen. Although his troops and battle prowess are not as strong as Shui Wu's, he is calm and composed. Thus, he should not be defeated. However, Shui Wu is stubborn and conceited. He might make a mistake. Report. All of a sudden, an anxious shout could be heard from outside the Phoenix cabinet. The person who appeared was a white-haired old man. His eyes were sharp, and his expression was one of panic. Yu Zhong, why are you so anxious? The sixth Saint Master furrowed his brows. Yu Zhong ignored the guard and strode forward. He greeted the sixth Saint Master and said, Sixth Saint Master, something bad has happened. The army led by Shui Wu has been completely annihilated. His voice reverberated clearly in the ears of the guards. However, none of them believed him. In fact, they even wondered if they had heard wrongly. Shui Wu, who had swept across the continent and caused the people of the Zhenlong continent to tremble in fear, was actually completely annihilated? Since when did the Zhenlong continent possess such battle prowess? Say that again. The sixth Saint Master's handsome face was covered with a layer of frost. Yu Zhong gritted his teeth and repeated, Shui Wu's army has been completely annihilated. Crack. The bluestone bricks that the sixth Saint Master had placed both his hands on broke into pieces with a cracking sound. His calm face had long since disappeared, and it had been replaced by a gloomy expression. Was it done by the Empire of Darkness? The sixth Saint Master asked coldly. He couldn't figure out where such a powerful force could have come from in the Zhenlong continent. The only possibility was that the Empire of Darkness had yet to make a move. No, Yu Zhong had a look of disbelief on his face. It was done by someone else. Who? Is there such a powerful force in the Zhenlong continent? The sixth Saint Master was shocked. The Heavenly Law Alliance. Yu Zhong said. Saint Master Shui Wu was killed by the Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. Impossible, the sixth Saint Master replied without hesitation. If it was the Heavenly Law Alliance's First World Senior, then there might still be a chance. However, the so-called Alliance Master was just a piece of trash who didn't even reach the fairy realm. So, how could he have possibly killed Shui Wu? Yu Zhong shook his head in a deep voice. His face was filled with shock. No, it was the Heavenly Law Alliance's new Alliance Master. His name is Su Yu. Su Yu? Who is he? Is there any expert of the fairy realm in the Zhenlong continent that we don't know about? The sixth Saint Master's eyes shone with a strange light. Yu Zhong's voice was trembling. He isn't some divine being, nor is he an expert of the fairy realm. According to what I know, 3 years ago, he was just a lowly, nameless soldier. He comprehended the pure divine decree and alerted the great Saint Master. Originally, he should have been killed by the great Saint Master, but the King of Darkness intervened and resolved the problem. I had no choice but to hunt him down. However, he disappeared from the world in the end. I never expected that he would reappear 3 years later as the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Moreover, He possesses extraordinary strength. According to the reports from our spies, Saint Master Wu Hin became his captive, and Saint Master Shui Wu was captured alive by him with a magical treasure. Yu Zhong was the fairy realm martial artist who had been hiding in the Jinlong continent. The ninth Saint Master was also the ancestor of the Yu clan, one of the 8 great ancient clans. Among the Saint Masters, his ranking was the lowest. The ninth Saint Master couldn't imagine that the lowly lad he had once hunted down would one day become the Heavenly Law Alliance's master. Slap! Suddenly, the ninth Saint Master's face was slapped, leaving a bright red palm print. Scoundrel! How could you only tell me about this now? The sixth Saint Master flew into a rage. 100 years ago, our king paid a great price to hide you in the continent. You were to monitor all of the strong martial artists who appeared in the continent. You were to report to us immediately if there was anyone with outstanding abilities who could become our hidden enemy. Why did you hide this from Suyu? The ninth Saint Master said bitterly he was just a nobody back then, and his whereabouts were unknown. Hence, I didn't pay much attention to him. A nobody? Yu Zhong, I think that you have gone senile. The sixth Saint Master said coldly. The divine decree has always been mysterious and unfathomable. Martial artists who have taken this path all possess unimaginable powers, especially after their divine decree has reached the pure divine realm. They're almost invincible among their peers. If they manage to comprehend a powerful divine decree, they will have the ability to kill people at a higher level than them. Hence, they're a group of mysterious martial artists who are feared by everyone in Jiuzhou. He then added, did you forget that he was one of the Jiuzhou Emperor's 5 great guards, the Wuxin Daoist? He relied on his divine decree to become as powerful as a prefecture's king. Even our central prefecture's king was extremely wary of him. Among the 5 great guards, he was the one that the central prefecture's king feared the most. This lad managed to cultivate his divine decree to the pure divine realm. Yet you still think that he is just a nobody? I think that you have been in the Jinlong continent for too long, and your brain has become muddled. Yu Zhong's heart thumped as he heard the sixth Saint Master's stern criticism. He knew that he might have really made a mistake. If he had reported this matter earlier, the central prefecture might have sent even stronger martial artists to kill this lad at all costs. How could such a situation have occurred? I was just inspecting this place. Sixth Saint Master, please have mercy on me. Yu Zhong's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. The sixth Saint Master snorted coldly. Now that we are in dire need of manpower, I will naturally not touch you. I will settle the score with you after the matters in the Jinlong continent are settled. Guard this place. I will go and meet the Heavenly Law Alliance Master. After the sixth Saint Master finished speaking, his eyes flickered as he flew into the sky and left. Light and shadow flashed past as the scenery started to reverse. Suyu stepped on a cloud and traveled millions of miles in a single day. He crossed the Jiuzhou continent and headed straight for the Empire of Darkness. Master, is it really as you said? After the dry cloud 5 elemental formation fuses with the underworld pearl, it can unleash 30% of the underworld pearl's power? Suyu asked as he flew. The blue and yellow round pearl that had almost killed Shui Wu was the product of the fusion of the dry cloud 5 elemental formations, blue pearl and the underworld pearl. Suyu had only refined less than 10% of the underworld pearl, so he obviously did not have the ability to fuse it. It was Yin Yazi who had helped Suyu craft it. Hehe, do you think I would lie to you? The underworld pearl contains too much ghost energy. Even if you refine it, you will not be able to unleash its full power. You will just be wasting such a precious treasure. Why don't you refine it into your dry cloud 5 elemental formation and transform it into the underworld great formation? Then, you can use the ghost energy within it to destroy your enemies. Its power is more than 10 times that of your dry cloud 5 elemental formation. The underworld great formation? Suyu licked his lips excitedly. Although he did not know what it was, he knew that it was definitely not a simple formation since it had come out of Yin Yazi's mouth. It's a pity that I only have 1 underworld pearl. If I had a few more, I could transform all 5 round pearls. Then, its power would be truly impressive. Yun Yazi said regretfully. Chapter 657. Yun Yazi suddenly said, "However, if it is just a pearl, combined with your first dragon's body, you will be able to unleash an unimaginable power. This pearl is extremely heavy, and if someone's body isn't strong enough for to fight you, they would probably cry but have no tears." The underworld pearl was incredibly heavy. Even though it looked like it was only 3 feet long, its weight was terrifying. Even Suyu, who had yet to refine it, could not hold it at all. If one day Suyu could successfully refine it, he would be able to control it as he pleased. Combined with his first dragon's body, he would be able to destroy mountains and crack the earth if he threw it out. Who would dare to take it head-on? "Master, can you understand the scriptures on the evil dragon divine body? The words on it are not the human race's language that I have seen before." Suyu took out the evil dragon divine body scripture. The writing on it was strange, and Suyu could not recognize a single word. "This is the dragon race's language. It would be strange if you could recognize it." Yin Yazi rolled his eyes. Dragon race's language? Suyu was very curious. Did the dragon race still exist in this world? The dragon race has long disappeared in the sands of time, and there are very few who can recognize the dragon race's language. However, I have studied the dragon race before, so I have some understanding of their language. This evil dragon divine body is the dragon race's holy cultivation technique, also known as the evil dragon 4 transformations. Every time one cultivates a new level, they can evolve to the next state, and their fighting power will soar. From what I know, this cultivation technique ranks among the top 3 body refining techniques, Yin Yazi said frankly. Suyu was startled. Top 3 body refining techniques? Yin Yazi was so mysterious that Suyu had never seen through him. His knowledge was so high that it was shocking. For this technique to be ranked among the top 3, it was obvious how powerful it was. Swish! A ray of light, which contained a consciousness, shot out from the jade box and entered Suyu's forehead. "This is my research on the various races' languages," Yin Yazi said. "You can read it all. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better it will be for you." Suyu was excited. These seemingly ordinary insights were actually more valuable than magical treasures. "Thank you, Master." Suyu was overjoyed. He immediately immersed his mind into the book and flipped through the notes that Yun Yazi had given him. Yun Yazi chuckled. "I have said that I will officially start helping you in your cultivation. Naturally, I am not lying. You can slowly comprehend it. It will take about a day to reach the Empire of Darkness. You have a day to comprehend it." Suyu was already immersed in it and did not respond. As Suyu immersed himself in the complicated knowledge, he was amazed. The amount of information contained in this wisp of consciousness was shockingly huge. It would take at least a year to digest all of it. This was under the premise that Suyu's level of comprehension was extraordinary. There are actually so many intelligent races in this world. Suyu gasped in amazement. In Yun Yazi's research, apart from the Dragon Clan, there was also the Demon Clan, the Ghost Clan, the Insect Clan, and so on. These were all clans that had never appeared in the Jinlong continent. And what race is this? Suddenly, Suyu realized that there was still a huge amount of information in this wisp of consciousness that was sealed. Divine race. What kind of race is that? Suyu was amazed. The information of this part of the seal only revealed the general content, which belonged to the God Clan. However, what kind of race was the so-called God Clan? More importantly, Yin Yazi had intentionally sealed this part of the information, not allowing Suyu to read it. Since my teacher has intentionally sealed it, it seems like I am asking in vain, Suyu thought to himself. The 2 words God Clan seemed to have some kind of invisible magical power that had been imprinted in Suyu's mind, and it was difficult for him to get rid of it. Suppressing his curiosity, Suyu's attention once again fell on the Dragon Clan's words. Just the Dragon Clan's words alone would require Suyu to comprehend them without rest or sleep for a month. Suyu was extremely interested, so he translated the evil dragon divine body word by word, gradually mastering hundreds of rare Dragon Clan's words. After half a day, Suyu came back to his senses, feeling somewhat exhausted. He rubbed his forehead and said, "The Dragon Clan's words are really obscure and hard to understand. A single word usually contains several different meanings. I need to ponder over a single sentence for an hour before I can determine its true meaning." After working for half a day, Suyu had only managed to decipher 6 sentences of the evil dragon divine body. He was still a long way from comprehending it completely. If the Dragon Clan's words were like this, then the Demon Clan's words, Ghost Clan's words, and other such words were also profound and would require a great deal of effort to study them. My teacher has really given me a great treasure trove. Suyu was well aware of the significance of studying these words, as they were too precious. His heart was filled with joy, and he prepared to once again immerse himself in studying the Dragon Clan's words. Swoosh! It was at this moment that 2 afterimages flew over from the horizon. One of them was red, while the other was white. The red afterimage was a red-robed old man. He had short white hair, and his face was filled with wrinkles. He was currently fleeing with a pale face. Behind him, a sharp aura was quickly approaching him. It was a young man clad in white armor. His cultivation was extremely high, and he was at the level 1 fairy realm. He was comparable to the otherworldly army's military commander. As for the red-robed old man, he was also at the level 1 fairy realm, but his aura was much weaker than the latter's. It seemed like he had just achieved a breakthrough not too long ago. "Humph, old thing, since you managed to escape from our encirclement, you are quite skilled. However, this is the end of it. Hand over the cloud galloping horse." The young man shouted coldly. As he waved his sleeves, a cold silver sword flew out of them and flew toward the red-robed old man's back. The old man turned pale with fright, and he hurriedly took out a high-grade divine artifact silk cloth from his sleeves. Sizzle! As the silk cloth was torn apart, the high-grade divine artifact was immediately shattered. "A bunch of uncivilized barbarians from the Jinlong continent want to compete with me." The white-armored youth laughed coldly. His silver sword sliced through the cloth and pierced through the old man's body without any hesitation. Fortunately, the trajectory of the silver sword, which was supposed to be a deadly strike, was slightly changed due to the silk cloth's obstruction. Thus, it pierced through the old man's ribs. However, this strike still managed to severely injure him. The old man's body somersaulted several times in the air before he fell heavily on the ground. At the same time, a jade box fell out his bosom. Inside the jade box, there was an agile pony sealed motionlessly inside the jade box. The pony's whole body emitted a shocking spiritual pressure. It contained a boundless energy. It was purer and more powerful than any elixir that Suyu had ever seen. Swoosh! As the jade box flickered, it appeared in the white-armored young man's hand. His eyes shone brightly as he said, "Hee hee, a cloud galloping horse. I didn't expect that the Jinlong continent would have such a spiritual object. It would be a waste to give it to you. Even if we fairies consume it, we can still refine our vital energy. I really don't understand how the Jinlong continent managed to grow such a rare spiritual object in Jiuzhou." The red-robed old man felt his heart ache, but he didn't have time to think about it. "You want to leave? Since I ran into you, then you don't need to leave." The white-armored young man pointed his finger at the old man, causing the silver flying sword to pierce through the air and penetrate the old man's head. At this moment, the red-robed old man was severely injured, so it was difficult for him to dodge such a dangerous strike. Just when it seemed like it was about to be destroyed, a clanging sound echoed out, and the sharp silver sword was suddenly cut into 2 pieces. It seems like the treasures of Jiuzhou's people aren't that great. They aren't even comparable to the treasures of an uncivilized barbarian like me. A cold voice echoed out. Splutter. As their minds were connected, the white-armored young man spouted a mouthful of blood and retreated in shock. "Who is it? Who are you?" His silver sword, which was close to being a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact, had unexpectedly been cut into 2 so easily. Swoosh! As a breeze blew past, a ghost-like figure appeared beside the red-robed old man. The handsome young man, who looked like a celestial child, was none other than Suyu. "Who are you, The white-armored young man looked at the small golden sword in Su Yu's hand, which he was playing with. His heart shuddered, as he knew that it was a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. He didn't believe that a half-fairy could easily cut his silver sword with a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. After all, Su Yu's power was no small matter. Why would a dead person need to know so much? Su Yu flicked his finger, causing the small golden sword to turn into nothingness and disappear. When it reappeared, it was right next to the young man's neck. The young man's expression changed in shock, and he immediately turned his head to evade it. However, he noticed that another golden light had appeared next to him and mercilessly penetrated him. A second small golden sword. You are the Heavenly Law Alliance's master. These were the last words he uttered in his life, as the small golden sword mercilessly penetrated his neck, causing his body to slowly fall to the ground. Su Yu waved his hand, causing the small golden sword and the jade box to fall into his palm at the same time. After fighting several fairies, Su Yu had a rough idea of his own power. He could easily deal with level 1 fairies, while level 2 fairies would require some effort. As for level 3 fairies, he would need to use most of his power. As for level 4 fairies, he still hadn't fought them yet, and it would be difficult to determine the victor. You are Alliance Master Su? The old man behind him asked in a trembling voice. His eyes were filled with shock and longing. Su Yu calmly turned his head and asked, "Who are you?" The old man's body shivered, as he felt overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. He quickly cupped his fists and greeted Su Yu. "I'm the Empire of Darkness's Chief Inspector, Bai Chong." "Greetings, Alliance Master Su." The Empire of Darkness Chief Inspector? Bai Yun and Bai He were both admirals, and this person was their overall leader, the Chief Admiral. "You and I aren't subordinates, so you don't need to be so courteous." Su Yu waved his sleeves, causing a breeze to help him up. Excitement and delight appeared on Bai Chong's face as he examined Su Yu in amazement. He then said excitedly, "Alliance Master Su, you led our Jinlong army and broke the otherworldly world's legend of invincibility. You are truly a role model for our Jinlong army, and you deserve our respect. So, it won't be too much for me to be courteous to you." It was obvious from his words that Bai Chong respected Su Yu. Su Yu calmly smiled. "It's just my duty, so you don't need to worry about it. If there isn't anything else, then I'll take my leave." After saying that, he turned around and left without saying a word. He still had the cloud galloping horse in his hands, so if he didn't leave now, when would he? Bai Chong looked at Su Yu's departing back and called out to him. However, he couldn't keep up with him due to his injuries. He's really just like the rumors said. He's just a youth, which is really surprising. Bai Chong's eyes were still filled with excitement when he saw Su Yu. He subconsciously stroked his chest as he recalled the cloud galloping horse. "Alliance Master Su, wait for me. My cloud galloping horse. Cough, cough, my cloud galloping horse." Bai Chong gasped for breath as he chased after Su Yu. It was unknown whether Su Yu had done it intentionally or not, but Su Yu had taken his cloud galloping horse with him.